Introduction to Dragon Ball Legend. www.zhaoxuanyuan.com. Come and read more of my works on the website under Xuanyuan. https://www.zhaoxuanyuan.com. Chapter 1. The Tragedy of Zhuolu. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. 5,000 years ago, the land of China was undergoing a bloody battle for survival. In the wilderness of Zhuolu, the army of the Yellow Emperor is besieging the remnants of the Qiyu tribe. Today is the 9th battle between both sides, and both sides have deployed all their troops. The previous 8 battles had already left the Yellow Emperor feeling exhausted. He held an important military conference and decided to engage in a decisive battle with the army of the Qiyu tribe for the 9th battle. The continuous battles have already exhausted the soldiers of the Yellow Emperor tribe. This military conference has been supported by all the generals attending the conference, and the soldiers are united. The Yellow Emperor has great confidence in the decisive battle. In the wilderness of Zhuolu, the army of Xuanyuan was lined up neatly, waving flags and hunting. At the front of the line was the vanguard of Huangdi's great general, Ying Long. He held a stone knife made and polished with fiery red stone, about 5 feet long and weighing about 200 kilograms. The wind blew on the blade and made a whistling sound. Behind Ying Long is the vanguard, beast soldiers, which are wild beasts trained by animal trainers to fight and attack. In the front row are long-haired handsome bears, who are 9 feet tall, heavy, and good at making sounds that shock mountains and rivers. Those who sound nearby can harm the heart and lungs, while those who sound far can have tinnitus and noise. They cannot sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. Next to the long-haired black bear, there are the base, wolf, leopard, and spear. Each beast soldier formation consists of 100 wild beasts, totaling 500. The trainer will use different commands to have corresponding wild beasts attack the enemy, while their own side will not be attacked by wild beasts. Behind the beast soldier formation is the Yellow Emperor's sergeant formation. Xuanyuan sat on a tall chariot, holding a bronze Xuanyuan sword handle, with the sword body upright. The chariot was pulled by 2 water unicorn beasts. The water unicorn has a tall physique with red long whiskers floating high on its lips. Its body is covered in scales as hard stones, and its long tail has sharper scales than a blade. When attacked, the unicorn's tail acts as a weapon for defense. The water qilin can travel freely in water and on land, running at an extremely fast speed. The water qilin beast once allowed the Xuanyuan Yellow Emperor to escape the pursuit of the Qiyu water tribe in the water during the 5th and 8th battles. Next to the chariot of Emperor Xuanyuan stood a young man wearing animal skin armor. He was tall and strong, staring sharply at the enemy team at the forefront of the beast soldier queue. This person is the son of Emperor Xuanyuan, Qingyang. Standing beside him were the capable generals of the Yellow Emperor, Changxian, De Hong, and He Fengho. They are also wearing animal skin battle clothes, holding sharp stone blades, and carrying bows and crossbows on their shoulders. The bow and crossbow battle team was arranged behind Qingyang, and the rear team was the largest infantry battle team. The Yellow Emperor ordered war drums and thunder to sound, and the surrounding wind and sand suddenly rose. The sound of war drums reached Qiyu's ears across from him, and he coldly laughed a few times. Qiyu, covered in bronze and iron armor, only revealed a pair of red eyes, like 2 angry fireballs. He sat on the back of the long-haired Black Panther with exposed fangs. The long-haired Black Panther was huge and could eat an elephant in one bite. Its body was covered in black and shiny fur, and when it ran too fast, its long ribs were like a pair of wings. Standing side by side behind Qiyu were also bronze-headed and iron-headed generals, who were his 81 brothers. Each person is inherently cruel and has unparalleled courage. On the left behind Qiyu, there is a Gonggang tribe holding a spear. In the middle position are the warriors of the Quafu giant clan, each tall and powerful, wearing battle clothes made of rattan. On the far right is the army of the three Miao tribes led by Xing Tian. The three Miao people have a fierce and evil appearance, with protruding foreheads and wearing battle clothes made of animal bones. The two armies are facing off, and a major war is on the verge of breaking out. The battle drums of the Yellow Emperor beat more and more loudly, becoming more urgent. The thunderous sound of war drums rushed straight towards Qi Yu's team, and it seemed that there were thunderous explosions everywhere around Qi Yu's team. Suddenly, in the middle of the queue, some soldiers began to feel unwell. Then, from the battle team of the Xingtian San Miao tribe, several soldiers had blood flowing from their ears, and the team began to panic. Several other ethnic soldiers from the queue had already fainted, and Xing Tian hurriedly ran over to report the situation of the ethnic soldiers to Qi Yu. Giant Quafu only took 2 steps to stand in front of Qi Yu from the back team. His tall body was even higher than Qi Yu sitting on the long-haired Black Panther. After listening to Xing Tian and Quafu's report, Qi Yu looked at the Yellow Emperor clan soldiers who were still beating drums across from him with indifference. He sneered and said, "Yellow Emperor Xuanyuan only knows how to use these drum-beating formations to scare children. He doesn't have much ability and has no qualifications to be the leader of the alliance in China." After saying these words, he praised his father and ordered all the clan soldiers to open their mouths, cover their ears, and silently recite our clan's silence curse in their hearts, dispersing their killing energy from beating drums. Once the drums stop, launch an attack immediately. Xing Tian was somewhat worried that the quiet heart curse was originally passed down by the Qi Yu clan for generations, allowing people to have a pure mind and not be affected by any external forces, completely forgetting the external world, but only the inner world. However, this quiet heart curse has a drawback. Although the mind and spirit of those who recite it have been purified, their bodies remain in place like walking corpses, and at this time, any external force can attack them. Qua Fu saw Xing Tian's concern and asked, "What if Xuanyuan's people attack us while we are all reciting the calm heart curse?" Huh! Qi Yu's laughter came from inside the iron armor, and his voice echoed with some copper and iron. He said, "With the deafening killing power of the drum formation, it can kill many ordinary soldiers with weak willpower, damage the hearing of most people, and even shock the lungs. But if their soldiers attack in our direction at this time, they will also enter the killing range of the drum formation. They may even kill 100 enemies, and they will also hurt 100 themselves. Xuanyuan, no matter how foolish he is, will not let himself fall into the infamous reputation of killing his own people." After hearing Qi Yu finish speaking, Xing Tian felt more confident in winning the decisive battle in his heart. He flattered him and said, "Qi Yu, the god of war, knows Xuanyuan's battles like the palm of his hand. No wonder they have fought against us 8 times but have all failed. Hurry up and convey the command." Qi Yu doesn't like to listen to flattery. What he needs is the victory in the final battle and the position he wants as the leader of the Chinese alliance. Giant Quafu turned around and came to the middle of the battle formation, placing his hands next to his ears, and then shouted loudly, commanding, "Let's go." All ethnic soldiers join in unison and respond, "Join in." Then neatly place the weapon under your armpit and clamp it, completely covering your ears with both hands. At this moment, after a series of collapsing sounds, the sound of drums gradually faded away. The Yellow Emperor, holding the Xuanyuan sword, furrowed his eyebrows tightly. He muttered to himself with concern, "Did my thunder battle formation not damage Qi Yu's morale? It seems that they have dodged the attack of my thunder battle drum." The eldest son of the Yellow Emperor, Qingyang, seemed to have a premonition that the thunder of the thunder and war drums had not played a significant role. He walked anxiously to the frame of the Yellow Emperor and wanted to tell his father about the situation. "Father." Without waiting for Qingyang to reveal the situation, the Yellow Emperor already knew what he was going to say and ordered Yinglong to prepare for battle. "Yes, father." Qingyang received his order and headed straight for the forward. In no time, the soldiers of the Qi Yu tribe came shouting and killing. The first wave of attacks came from the Quafu giant clan, waving their thick arms all the way and shouting to kill, flying sand and stones wherever they passed. The tall and bulky physique shook the earth as if it was about to collapse. Looking at the giant tribe soldiers who had killed him, Xuanyuan remained calm with his eyes fixed on his copper sword. Immediately after, the Yellow Emperor, sitting on the Kirin chariot, waved his right hand in mid-air, and a messenger immediately rode on the young wolf mount, patrolling in front of the formation to convey war orders. Pioneer Yinglong raised the red flame stone blade and lifted it into the air. Suddenly, several animal trainers standing behind the animal soldiers sounded their horns, and the ordered animal soldiers roared into the sky, ready to charge towards the battlefield at any time. Go to battle, kill. With a loud shout from the dragon, the order was given to land. The first row of beast soldiers rushed out to attack the giant soldiers who were being killed on the opposite side. The beasts, relying on their own flying speed, jumped up when they were close to the giants and rushed directly to the chest of the giant tribe soldiers, fiercely biting their arms and shoulders. Then, the well-trained tribe soldiers vigorously shook off the beast soldiers who were rushing towards them, causing chaos on the battlefield. Hua Fu saw his clan soldiers being stopped by beast soldiers and rushed into the fighting team in great anger. He shook off the approaching cheetah with his left hand and killed the beast soldiers with his right hand. Along the way, more than 10 beasts had already been killed behind him. Hua Fu's eyes were burning with anger, as he was about to break through the encirclement of the beast soldiers and arrive at the front of the Yellow Emperor's team. Yinglong swung his stone knife to kill him head-on. He swung his knife towards Hua Fu's feet and Hua Fu dodged, grabbing the knife and axe that had come over. The two generals were glued together with equal strength, and Qiyu, who was waiting in the array, couldn't wait for so long. He ordered other troops to start attacking. His 81 brothers were all copper-headed and iron-legged, and the beast soldiers were helpless towards these soldiers who were invincible. Their sharp claws didn't hurt a single soldier, and their sharp teeth couldn't break any skin. Seeing that half of his beast soldiers were already injured and the battle situation was not ideal, Xuanyuan was very anxious. He quickly ordered the crossbow soldiers to release arrow clusters, with thousands of arrow clusters covering the sky. The skilled archers fired each arrow cluster directly at the enemy's position. The massive body of the giant soldiers became the target of the arrow cluster, and soon the clan soldiers of the giant tribe fell one after another. Qiyu's undead clan soldiers came into battle, and the arrow cluster could not be shot. Xuanyuan personally led his troops to the battle, with Chang Xian, De Hong, and He Feng Ho, the three great generals, guarding him around Xuanyuan at all times. It is difficult to distinguish between the enemy and us when the armies of both sides are mixed together, and they have been killed with envy. At this moment, the soldiers of the Qiyu tribe, covered in bronze heads and iron forehead, besieged Xuanyuan in the middle of the battlefield. Xuanyuan, who was fighting desperately, almost got injured by Xing Tian, who had been killed several times. As Xuanyuan fought fiercely to the left and right, he found that his sharp sword was unable to harm the Qiyu soldiers with copper heads and iron arms. He stood there in shock and confusion, watching as the enemy surrounded him. On the periphery, Yinglong is dealing with Xing Tian, and he has seen the besieged young master Xuanyuan. Xuanyuan is the most valued son of the Yellow Emperor. Yinglong knows very well what the safety of Xuanyuan's young master means to the Yellow Emperor's family. If the future tribal leader is killed by the enemy, as a vanguard general, he will definitely be punished by the Yellow Emperor. With these thoughts in mind, Yinglong dodged Xing Tian, who had swung his big stick to kill him. He arrived at the encirclement of the Qiyu tribe and found that these soldiers had copper heads and iron arms. If they blindly used weapons to strike their upper bodies, they would not be able to kill them. Before he could figure out a good way to break into the encirclement, Xing Tian swung a big stick as thick as a tree from behind and fiercely smashed it against the back of Yinglong. Yinglong's reaction was agile. He flipped over to the ground and rolled to one side, causing the large wooden stick to smash a dent heavily on the ground. Just as he was rolling on the ground, Yinglong finally found the weakness of the Qiyu tribe soldiers. He picked up his knife and axe and vigorously chopped at the heels of those tribe soldiers. The upper body and legs of the Qiyu soldiers are wrapped in iron armor, so they are not easily injured. The only area not covered by iron armor is the feet. The Qiyu tribe soldiers who were suddenly cut to death at their feet suddenly screamed and fell to the ground, and the encirclement of Xuanyuan suddenly opened a hole. Ing Long successfully killed him and immediately protected Xuanyuan in front of him. "Young master, hurry up and I'll block it here." "No, Qiyu has not been defeated yet, I cannot back down." Xuanyuan couldn't bear to leave his tribe behind and run for his own life. He is not afraid of death, he is only worried that these people will harm his father, so he cannot leave, especially when the enemy is still attacking. "Slash their feet, rush out first," shouted the dragon. The three generals guarding Xuanyuan, Chang Xian, De Hong, and Feng Ho, understood and swung their weapons towards the feet of the Qiyu tribe soldiers. The tribe soldiers wearing heavy iron armor did not expect the other party to suddenly cut them down, and they all began to dodge left and right for a while. Xuanyuan was rescued from the siege, and he was escorted running towards his position. Along the way, he saw his clan soldiers being killed by the enemy on the roadside, some still struggling on the ground, holding weapons tightly in his hands, as if he never gave up his determination to kill the enemy until the last moment of his life. The attack of the Qiyu tribe soldiers has already taken a strong advantage, and their armor is about to attack the camp of the Yellow Emperor. Qiyu is very excited, and he shouted loudly to his soldiers. "The Yellow Emperor Xuanyuan has been defeated by us, and his son is running away from the battlefield with his tribe. Now is the time to capture the Yellow Emperor alive and eliminate the Yellow Emperor's clan. All ethnic soldiers must strive to pursue and occupy the fertile land bestowed upon us by the heavens, the Qiyu clan. Kill me." Chapter 2. Xuanyuan Refuge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing the leader's order, the reserve clan soldiers waiting behind Qiyu rushed out and killed the Yellow Emperor clan soldiers who were retreating back. Whoever retreats again will be punished as a traitor, and they will be killed on the spot. Xuanyuan saw the tribe soldiers running back behind him and shouted angrily, "Kill them all for me. If we lose, they will come over, and the families standing behind us may become their prisoners. Our children will be driven away from their homes like livestock, and even die in the wilderness. And we, the tribe soldiers, will be pulled to do hard labor to refine the cannibalistic iron for them. Are you willing to let your family suffer and hand over your life and death to Qiyu, who is like a demon?" Upon hearing the questioning from their young master, the clan soldiers stood in place instantly, and their minds involuntarily conjured up images of their family members and fantasies of being slaughtered. "We, the Yellow Emperor, are a tribe that drinks the brave blood of the Yellow River. We have always defended our homeland with our lives. We do not have copper heads and iron arms, but we have a fearless determination to fight and die." Xuanyuan holds up his sword and roars loudly. "All of us, the Yellow Emperor, take your weapons and fight back with me. Young master, you were injured just now, you can't go all out with the enemy anymore." Chang first supported Xuanyuan, who had been injured in his left arm, and expressed some concern. "I am the son of the Yellow Emperor and also your young master. How can I be timid in battle? I must go up, and everyone is watching me." Xuanyuan finished speaking, gripping his sword and killing back to the battlefield. Upon seeing Xuanyuan's determination to fight to death, Ing Long immediately approached his vanguard and ordered the crossbowmen to put away their crossbows, pick up their stone axes, and fight to the death against the enemy. All the soldiers of the Yellow Emperor tribe regained their fighting spirit and returned to the battlefield one after another. For a moment, the enemy also rushed over, and the two teams fought with bloodshot eyes. Blood and flesh flew wildly, weapons collided with each other, and the broken handle of the stone axe hit the opponent again. The person who fell to the ground was severely hit by the big stick countless times, and his whole body was without intact skin. Everywhere is the sound of ghostly bugles, and everywhere is the shouting of killing. One fell and another group rushed over. The soldiers of the Yellow Emperor finally repelled the first wave of chasing Quafu Giant Clan and Sanmiao Clan, and were then blocked by Chi Yu's armored Ironhead Clan soldiers. The Beast Tamer is still working hard to release the spell, hoping that those wounded beast soldiers who can still stand up can continue to participate in the battle. The melee has caused both the enemy and us to lose direction, and they can no longer distinguish where their positions are. They only have one consciousness in their hearts, which is to fight to defend their homeland. The Yellow Emperor, who had been sitting on the chariot all along, calmly watched the changes on the battlefield. He saw fallen clan soldiers and his son, who was already injured and almost unable to hold his sword. He thought of the previous battles with Chi Yu. Originally, he wanted to use a tolerant heart to blend in with the Chi Yu clan, but Chi Yu, who was naturally belligerent, did not want to rule with his Yellow Emperor clan. Chi Yu, relying on his fierce fighting spirit, only wanted other clan members to become his slaves and then invade their lands and homes. In the past, the Yan Emperor's clan was defeated by Chi Yu and lost their homeland. They have not yet been able to return to their own territory. The Yellow Emperor is very dissatisfied with Chi Yu's ambition to annex his clan. Yan Emperor was one of the tribal leaders who fled to his own tribe to seek refuge after being defeated by Chi Yu. This is his last decisive battle as the leader of the tribal alliance against Chi Yu, and he can only win but not lose. Otherwise, the Yellow Emperor's clan will no longer exist in this Yellow River basin. For the sake of his own people, the Yellow Emperor made up his mind to prepare to do what he had always been unwilling to do, but had to do it. On the battlefield, there was still fighting. Although Qingyang led his clan soldiers to kill them back, it was still difficult to resist the brutal Chi Yu army as they approached the chariot of the Yellow Emperor. The one running at the forefront was Chi Yu, who had always wanted to kill the Xuanyuan Yellow Emperor. Xuanyuan, today I'm here to take your life. Chi Yu is riding on his own mount, and the black feather flying leopard is carrying Chi Yu like lightning, almost colliding with the Yellow Emperor's mount, the water Qilin. The Yellow Emperor stood up calmly and raised his Xuanyuan sword in his hand, shouting at the water Qilin like an order to go to the Yellow River. The water Qilin raised his front hooves towards the sky, roaring as he turned and flew away in another direction. The black-feathered flying leopard was frightened by the water Qilin leaping into the air and stopped in an instant. Chi Yu, who had not regained his senses for a while, was also startled by the Yellow Emperor's sudden escape. It took him a while before he regained his senses and sneered, "No matter where you run, today is your day of death." Chi Yu drove the black feather flying leopard away from the battlefield and chased after him. The Yellow River roared with anger as it echoed between heaven and earth, crashing against both sides of the river. In the center of the water, there were turbulent eddies everywhere. The bank of the Yellow River was 3 zhang high from the bottom of the river, with dense primitive forests on the opposite bank and fertile fields on the other bank. The water Qilin and the Yellow Emperor rushed from this bank. Upon arriving at the shore, the Yellow Emperor got off the carriage and straightened his clothes before inserting the Xuanyuan sword into the ground. He bowed 9 times to the Yellow River according to the ancient ritual and then kowtowed 3 times. After completing these, he bowed again. The heavens are above, the mother of the river is in front, and the father of the earth is below. Today, I, Xuanyuan, pray here, praying to the people. The Chi Yu tribe has repeatedly violated my land in China, killed our people, and the people are struggling to make a living. In the spirit of caring for all the people in the world as one, my tribe originally wanted to live in harmony with the Chi Yu tribe. However, Chi Yu was cruel and wanted to destroy my tribe. He became bloodthirsty. Xuanyuan kneels here with blood to pray to the Yellow River ancestor to release the divine dragon to help me defeat Chi Yu and save the lives of all our people. After bowing 3 times and bowing 9 times, the Yellow Emperor bowed and finally arrived at the riverbank. Looking at the river flowing incessantly like a wild horse, the Yellow Emperor extended his left hand and held a sword in his right hand. The sword blade slashed heavily on his left palm, and bright red blood flowed down from his palm. Across the 3 zhang high bank, blood dripped into the Yellow River, and the droplets continued to drip into the water below, slowly forming a blood-red hue. At this moment, Qiyu chased after him, and the black feather flying leopard panted heavily, with its eyes bulging. It stared at the Qilin beast, wishing to eat the water Qilin immediately. Huh, Qiyu laughed heartily. Yellow Emperor, where else can you escape? Unable to defeat me, he escaped here and jumped into the river to commit suicide. The famous Xuanyuan Yellow Emperor was no more than that. Now you have arrived at the bank of the Yellow River, which is your holy land and also your last place of life. If you die in this place, you can be considered dead. Qiyu finished speaking and raised his weapon. The black feather flying leopard leaped into the air, about to pounce towards the position behind the Yellow Emperor. The Qilin beast had already taken the lead, suddenly jumped up and fell in front of the flying leopard from mid-air, showing its teeth and claws in a biting posture, which frightened the black feather flying leopard from approaching. A Qilin beast, no matter how powerful, is also a beast that dares to show off its divine power in front of me. Qiyu jumped up from the black panther and waved his hand to injure the Qilin beast. He dodged the obstruction of the Qilin beast and ran straight behind the Yellow Emperor. He wanted to cut off the head of the Yellow Emperor and let the people of the Yellow Emperor's family be his slaves forever. Emperor Qiyu, be careful. Don't get close to the bank of the Yellow River, the Zhuolu tribe which Nu Ba, who arrived, shouted desperately behind Qiyu. When Nu Ba left the battlefield in Qiyu, she had already sensed the sudden disappearance of the Yellow Emperor. There was something suspicious about it. When she chased after him near the bank of the Yellow River, she saw that the Yellow Emperor Xuanyuan was sacrificing blood to the god of the Yellow River, praying for the safety of the people, and knew that something was not good. The first female wizard of the Zhuolu tribe, the female Ba, has a short stature, is as light as a swallow, and walks like a gust of wind. Bald, without eyebrows, wearing a black raincoat as if it were raining every day, she was proficient in witchcraft and divine language, obedient to Qiyu, holding a blackwood phoenix head divine crutch in her hand. The voice of the female Ba had not yet reached Qiyu's ear, but Qiyu had already stood on the bank of the Yellow River. As he raised his weapon and swung it towards the Yellow Emperor, the earth trembled. Qiyu couldn't stand firm and fell to the ground. Then, countless water columns surged up from the Yellow River channel, reaching a height of hundreds of meters. The Yellow River water overflowed from the bank and slapped a huge wave towards Qiyu, causing Qiyu to feel a sharp pain all over his body. Fortunately, with his divine power in his body, he rested for a while, and Qiyu stood up and dragged his armor towards the position of the female Ba. In the middle of the river, the big waves rolled and the sky and earth became dark. A golden dragon appeared faintly in the air, and its roar echoed throughout the world. Trees and leaves tilted against the wind. Unexpectedly, the Yellow Emperor invited the Yellow River guardian god, the golden-armored divine dragon, and Qiyu, who had calmed down and lost his sight. He knew very well that summoning the divine dragon would be difficult to defeat. Even though he thought he was a victorious one, he still had some power in the human world. When encountering the ancient guardian god, he could only give up. He summoned the black feather flying panther and prepared to flee for his life. Emperor Qiyu, don't be afraid. The female Ba kept looking at the roaring dragon in the sky, with a slightly disdainful expression on her face. She said, they invited the dragon to assist us in battle, and we can also summon the guardian god of our Zhuolu tribe, Qinyu Feifeng, to cheer us on. Upon hearing this, Qiyu suddenly regained vitality all over. His eyes once again emitted sharp blood from his face armor. You quickly recite a spell to offer sacrifices. Today, you must wield the head of the Yellow Emperor. The Yellow Emperor rode on the back of the Qilin beast, with a golden dragon spinning in mid-air behind him. Dark clouds covered the top, and lightning flashed occasionally between the clouds. Qiyu. The Yellow Emperor shouted, if you now command your clan soldiers to stop killing, lay down their weapons of killing, and submit to my Huaxia group, I can plead with the divine dragon not to offend you and your clan soldiers again, otherwise you will die here today. Huangdi Xuanyuan, what qualifications do you have to negotiate with me? I am the god of war of the Zhuolu tribe, and no one can kill me, Qiyu. Today, I will cut off your head and make you a slave to our Zhuolu tribe for generations. Cruel Qiyu, you are still trapped and fighting until you die. Killing you alone is not a pity. I, the golden-armored divine dragon, empathize with the lives of your people and cannot bear to harm other creatures just because of you. Now you are still stubborn, selfish and cruel. Today, I will take your head away to comfort the heroic souls who died because of you. Divine dragon protects the sky, awe-inspiring all directions, all beasts obey orders, and fight against Qiyu. The Yellow Emperor held the Xuanyuan sword in his hand, and the sword pointed to many divine beasts that jumped out of the Yellow River water and headed straight towards Qiyu. The female Ba lay on the ground with her 5 bodies, muttering words in her mouth. Her incantations echoed like sounds from outside the sky in the high sky. Suddenly, layers of black clouds in the sky separated into a gap, piercing out 1,000 rays of light from the gap. In an instant, the clouds dispersed to both sides, and 1,000 feather-flying phoenix emerged in the air, shining with 1,000 colors. The 1,000-feather god, grant me light and bless our tribe with invincibility in battle. The female Ba lifted the phoenix head divine wood and kept worshipping the 1,000-feather-flying phoenix that had already been summoned. Qiyu is being chased by countless beasts, with a yellow-spotted tiger in front and countless other animals following behind. The larger ones include divine elephants and lions, while the smaller ones include monkeys, badgers, wolves, etc. Fortunately, the lightning-fast escape speed of the black feather-flying leopard prevented Qiyu from being caught up all the way. On the battlefield, fighting is still taking place, and the clan soldiers of the Yellow Emperor have begun to retreat. The Qiyu army, dressed in protective iron armor, has surrounded Xingyang and his close clan corps, and the general Ling Longzheng is fighting fiercely against Quafu. Xingyang held a broken bronze sword in his hand and slid a warm, dark red blood along the sharp blade, slowly dripping onto his feet. He was covered in blood oozing from his wound. The shouting of killing kept coming and going without interruption. Looking around, Xingyang saw all the clan soldiers of Qiyu. Although he knew he was going to die in battle, even if he had shed his last drop of blood, he would not easily let go of his sword. Xing Tian, who was also covered in bloodstains, was preparing to make the final blow to Xingyang. As long as he killed Xingyang, other Yellow Emperor generals on the battlefield would lay down their weapons and surrender. Xingyang, listen, your people have all fled for their lives. You should immediately put down your weapons and kneel down to obey, otherwise you will have your head on the ground and there will be no place to bury yourself. Xing Tian threatened Xingyang. Our Huaxia tribe will never flee for the sake of survival. How could we escape? Xingyang grinned his blood-stained lips and said with a smile, do you hear the sound of killing enemies around you? That's our people killing your clan soldiers one by one, all the way to Qiyu's head, killing you cruel beasts. Even when you die, you still have such backbone. You truly deserve to be the son of the Yellow Emperor. Xing Tian was scolded with anger in his eyes. Now, I will let your head fall to the ground and see how you can kill us. Kill them for me. With Xingtian's command, the clan soldiers rushed forward. Xingyang and the generals who protected him were unable to resist the continuous attacks of the Qiyu Legion, and they were about to be killed on the battlefield. For some unknown reason, the soldiers of the Qiyu tribe scattered around in an instant. Before they could see what the group of monsters running towards them looked like, Xingyang, who had already been scarred, fainted on the ground. Yinglong dragged his wounds all over his body, protecting Xingyang's dying body with other seriously injured members. The divine beasts rushing by seemed to see the wounded lying on the ground belonging to the Yellow Emperor clan, all jumping over without harming any soldiers. Black Feather Flying Leopard dragged Qiyu through the middle of the battlefield. Qiyu shouted to his armored soldiers as he fled, "Come and save me, stop these monsters." Countless divine beasts rushed into the battlefield, and the Qiyu tribe soldiers immediately became chaotic. The divine beasts charged left and right, forcing the Qiyu tribe soldiers to run around everywhere. Hua Fu grabbed a male lion with his own strength, but was entangled by a group of macaques. He fell heavily to the ground and was trampled by a herd of elephants before even standing up. The injury was severe, so he quickly dodged. Meanwhile, Xing Tian organized a legion to counterattack and found an exit to break through. He used all his strength to kill the wolf pack, only to see the members of the Qiyu Legion lying on the ground, howling in agony. "Young master, we are saved. The golden-armored divine dragon has come to save us. Wake up quickly." Ing Long, seeing that the Qiyu Legion has been defeated by various beasts, excitedly called out to Qingyang, who was lying in his arms and had not yet awakened. Qiyu ran to a high place, where his armored soldiers had already blocked the chasing herd of beasts. He gasped for breath and let out a long sigh. The Yellow Emperor villain, who couldn't beat me, invited the golden-armored divine dragon to assist in the battle. It would be great if my great wizard, Lady Ba, could invite the Qianyu god. Just as Qiyu was besieged by various beasts and unable to escape, countless ferocious birds suddenly flew into the sky, some like vultures, some like massive crows, and many birds with pointed long beaks rushed towards the beasts. Seeing those rescue soldiers flying in, Qiyu laughed wildly. "I am the god of war, and heaven will not destroy me." The great wizard finally invited the flying birds of Xiandao, my guardian god, Qianyu Feifeng. The thousand-feather flying phoenix, the Yellow Emperor exclaimed in horror that he had only heard of an ancient divine beast. Legends about the flying birds of the Immortal Island had been circulating among his ancestors, and the thousand-feather flying phoenix was the true god of the Immortal Island, with power comparable to that of the golden-armored divine dragon. These Xiandao birds live south of Zhuolu Mountain, separated by the sea. He didn't expect to see the legendary mythical beast today, and this phoenix flying in the sky has become the guardian god of the Zhuolu tribe. He was worried that the land beasts he had invited might not be a match for the birds of Xiandao. He weakly prayed that these birds could be like beasts, only hurting people but not killing. Inviting the golden-armored divine dragon and various land beasts, the Yellow Emperor originally intended to prevent the Qiyu army from killing his own people, using war to stop the war in exchange for peace. However, he did not expect Qiyu's great wizard to also invite the thousand-feather flying phoenix in the same way, which was an unexpected event that he did not expect. Qiyu reorganized the fleeing clan soldiers and ordered every soldier to do their best to kill the enemy and eliminate the Yellow Emperor clan. At this moment, the beasts were entangled by birds and had no time to worry about besieging Qiyu. The Yellow Emperor's army and Qiyu's army once again engaged in a decisive battle. At this moment, Emperor Yan led his own clan soldiers to join the Yellow Emperor's army, and the newly added strength boosted the morale of the Yellow Emperor's army. Qiyu's army began to flee again. Qiyu was furious. "Emperor Yan dared to fight against me. It wasn't my negligence that slowed down the pursuit of him." By then, he had already been buried under the yellow soil. Nu Ba was very anxious when she saw Qiyu's army losing again. She came to Qiyu's side and said, "Emperor Yan led his army to kill us, which is very detrimental to our Zhuolu army. The joint army of the two emperors of Yan and Huang attacked me together. We no longer have reinforcements to assist in the battle. If the birds of Xiandao can eat all these enemies, leave their bones scattered everywhere, and help me destroy the Chinese people, we can forever occupy this yellow river." However, the great wizard hesitated and said, "I pray to invite the god of thousand feathers to bring rescue soldiers to the flying birds on Xiandao. There are conditions. Xiandao is the holy land of thousand feathers flying phoenix to the south of my Zhuolu mountain. Although thousand feathers flying phoenix is the guardian god of our tribe, its divinity is that it will never allow the birds and the flying birds on Xiandao to harm human lives. According to what you said, we worship the gods year after year. Now it's the final moment of life and death, but Qianyu Feifeng is still worried about hurting the enemy. Do we have to wait until all our clan members are killed and exterminated by the Yan Huang coalition army, and we are all separated? What's the use of going to worship the gods? Emperor Qiyu, never use such a tone to slander the gods. This is disrespectful and will be punished by heaven. While instructing Qiyu not to speak recklessly, the female Ba murmured her apologies to the gods, as if she was confessing and atoning for Qiyu's disrespectful words towards the gods. Since the gods cannot save the lives of our people, what is the use of worshipping the gods? Qiyu became impatient when he saw his own clan soldiers being besieged and hanged on the battlefield. Don't worry, God of War, said the great wizard. There is nothing we can do to provoke the killing anger of these birds. The female Ba pondered for a moment and said with a solemn expression, unless she recited the bloodthirsty curse. Okay, read it quickly. I want them to eat all the beasts and give me all the bones to eat from the Yellow Emperor's clan soldiers. Qiyu spoke fiercely. But the great wizard hesitated to speak, showing a slight difficulty. What's good about it? Do you still have a kind heart towards these enemies? Qiyu stared at the female Ba with some anger. Don't be angry, Emperor. I wish I could have dismembered them on the banks of the Yellow River. The great wizard seems to have relieved her worries a lot when she spoke about this. For her, no matter how much she worries or fears, it is not as important as killing the Yellow Emperor. She originally wanted to tell Emperor Qiyu that if she recited the bloodthirsty curse, she might also be punished by heaven. However, seeing the soon-to-be defeated Qiyu Legion, she also wanted to make a final move. In order for the Zhuolu people to remain invincible in war, she is willing to sacrifice her own blood to the battlefield. The great wizard waved her cane, her eyes bulging, and she recited a bloodthirsty spell. Her bright head began to smoke slowly as the spell began, with long strands of smoke resembling hair growing infinitely. These strands seemed to have life, and they gradually rose to the sky as if searching for a target. As these black tobacco strands curled and coiled above the heads of the birds on the fairy island, suddenly the tobacco seemed to have found their own food. A thread aimed at a bird, piercing through its thick feathers into their heart. In an instant, the birds seemed to have been infused with infinite divine power. Just now, they were just using a flying pounce to block the progress of the beasts. From being cast a spell, each bird was like a warrior. Their long beaks suddenly turned into sharp blades, and every attack on the beasts could stab them to the ground. The fallen beasts moaned in pain, often one in front of them falling to the ground, while the other had already been pecked by their long beaks, with bruises all over their bodies. And the severely injured beast lay on the ground, on the brink of death, unable to stand up and could only watch its body being bitten by brutal birds. A large group of birds passed by, and the smaller ones had already been bitten, leaving only bones. Birds and beasts devoured humans. Someone shouted in the chaotic battlefield, followed by another group shouting the same, and finally everyone was shouting. Emperor Yan led his own clan soldiers to fight and encountered the Yellow Emperor who had returned from the banks of the Yellow River on the outskirts of the battlefield. Flying birds devouring humans is a witchcraft, said Emperor Yan, standing beside the Yellow Emperor in some panic. Magic that harms others will be punished by heaven. The Yellow Emperor was full of anger, and he did not expect that Qiyu would let his great wizard bring magic into the battlefield, let alone their vicious magic. What should we do? Emperor Yan became somewhat panicked, and the enchanted birds began to bite the soldiers, biting off human flesh one after another. The battlefield was filled with the soldiers' cries and cries of sorrow. The remains covered the road, the plasma stained the ground red, and the dry land began to feel a bit muddy. Clan soldiers are dying one by one, and the death is unbearable. Those who are still alive have long been scared out of courage by this terrifying murderous aura, running for their lives one after another. The great wizard of Qiyu did not abide by the way of heaven and earth, and did not respect the power of nature. Now, he has transformed the divine way of beasts and birds into a vicious and demonic way. I can only pray truthfully to the golden armor divine dragon. The arrival of the heavenly punishment is also the fault of the Qiyu clan. After the Yellow Emperor finished speaking, he raised the sword of Xuanyuan and the golden light rushed straight to the top of the clouds. He muttered words in his mouth, the light of the great road, the majestic dragon, the roaring thunder and lightning, the dragon roaring in all directions. Chapter 3. Punishment of Heavenly Descent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The top of the female Ba's head, shining with light, seemed to have grown countless black hairs, and the other end of the hair thread had been implanted into the spiritual heart of the bird. The flying birds were like puppets in the hands of the female Ba, being manipulated by her at will. The Yellow Emperor clan soldiers were torn and bitten wave after wave, and more than half of them had already died or been injured. The golden-armored divine dragon roared with anger, and after a burst of thunderous roar, the divine dragon spewed flames from its mouth. Heavenly fire rushed straight towards the head of the female Ba, and millions of black tobacco threads immediately turned into threads of fire, burning hot and fiercely into the female Ba's head. The female Ba, who was hit by the flames of the golden dragon, trembled all over and turned red, like a burning iron block. With just a little more quenching, the iron block could turn into molten iron. Wherever the flames go, their souls are scattered and no grass grows. Some birds of the Xiandao birds were burned to death in mid-air and were already ashes, while others had feathers that caught fire and fell heavily to the ground. The female Ba was about to be burned to death. She endured the burning pain and suddenly offered sacrifices to the Fengui divine wood. A clear light passed through the flames, and although the fire was fierce, it could not destroy the divine wood at all. After the clear light, there was a sharp chirping of birds, and 1,000 flying phoenixes appeared in the air. Thousands of white feathers scattered in the air, densely covering the sky. The feather followed the fiery flame and instantly solidified into ice wherever it touched. The 1,000-feather ice curse, upon seeing the floating feathers in the air, the Yellow Emperor's face changed greatly. Qiyu's great wizard used the phoenix head divine wood to bewitch the 1,000-feather divine spirit to release the ice curse. Once the dragon flame was suppressed by the ice curse, Qiyu would definitely take this opportunity and order the great wizard to use magic to attack his army again. He believed very much that Qiyu would do anything for the sake of war. The Yellow Emperor immediately instructed the Yen Emperor to stand by his side. He inserted the Xuanyuan sword into the ground, then fell to the ground and worshipped, praying to heaven for her life. He also stated that the witch Qiyu disregarded the suffering of the world and bewitched the guardian deity, Qianyu Feifeng, to destroy her life. After praying to the Yellow Emperor, he remained devoutly lying on the ground waiting for the sky to change. After a while, heaven and earth suddenly changed, and a golden light circled in the sky. Immediately after, at the other end of the sky, the blue light suddenly appeared surrounded by the golden light in the sky. Gradually, the two rays of light merged into one, getting further and further away, until they disappeared into the clouds. The flames of the divine dragon and the cold ice of the flying feathers disappeared in the air at the same time, and the birds lost their magic. The divine power of the beasts on the road faded away, and the corpses piled up everywhere. The bloody and chaotic battlefield temporarily became a little quiet. The great wizard also lost his magic and was covered in burns, lying on the side on the brink of death. Qiyu was also burned by the flames, and he felt unbearable pain. He had to take off his proud god of war armor and reveal his fierce face. He took off the armor of the god of war with a copper head and iron arms. At this moment, it was time to kill him. Quickly remove his head, and when Emperor Yen saw the opportunity to kill Qiyu, he was overjoyed and immediately reminded Emperor Huang. The Yellow Emperor saw Qiyu panting not far away. At this moment, there was no warrior guarding him, only the injured clan soldiers a few meters away struggling to survive. The Yellow Emperor stood up, drew his Xuanyuan sword, and shouted, "Mount yourself, protect the lord of the Qilin beast." The frostbitten Qilin beast sneezed, shook the remaining ice residue on its body, and leaped vigorously to the feet of the Yellow Emperor. The Yellow Emperor flipped over and rode onto the back of the Qilin, holding a sword in his hand. The Qilin beast endured the pain and stood awkwardly, then exerted all his strength to whirlwind the Yellow Emperor to Qiyu. Qiyu, the heavenly punishment has arrived. I will take your life on behalf of the heavens, yelled the Yellow Emperor. Ah! Qiyu looked up and only glanced at the Yellow Emperor who was wielding his sword towards him. With a scream, Qiyu was nowhere to be found. Qiyu was killed by the Yellow Emperor, and the Yen Emperor was immediately overjoyed. He immediately had the drummer beat the war drum to play the sound of victory, and in an instant, everyone on the battlefield heard the message from the drum. The army of Qiyu has long been in a state of collapse, and hearing the victory of the Yellow Emperor's army at this moment is like hearing one's own death knell, and one's heart is even more shattered. The jubilant army of the Yellow Emperor began to regain their morale. Just as they were celebrating their victory, a circular red unidentified object suddenly appeared from thousands of miles high in the sky, sweeping across the sky and disappearing into the eastern position, leaving only a golden scratch in the sky. Dragon heart falling. The Yellow Emperor let out a sigh and suddenly felt his chest dull and weak all over. Fortunately, the Yen Emperor had a quick reaction and stepped forward to support the Yellow Emperor's arm. Yinglong and Xiaohao followed Qingyang's arrangement to stay in place. The two of them lit a pile of dead branches with flint tools. Qingyang tidied up his attire, wrapped the Xuanyuan sword in animal skin cloth and carried it on his back, tying both ends tightly around his chest. The dark sky tightly envelopes the stone steps, making them appear eerie and terrifying. Looking at the flickering flames on the rooftop, it seems like a ghost waiting to devour the lives of intruders at night. Yinglong and Xiaohao each held a torch to lead the way, and with the light of the fire, the three of them arrived at the stone steps. After I go up, you two will wait for me here. If anything unexpected happens to me, you two don't have to worry about me. You will climb up to the altar for me, and no matter what the cost is, you will see the high priest and cure father's illness. Qingyang earnestly explained to the two of them. Following the arrangement of the young master, the two carefully agreed. Qingyang finished giving orders and lifted his foot up the first step. He felt that the stone steps were slippery and could easily fall off if he was not careful. In order to prevent himself from sliding, he tilted his body's center of gravity towards the stone step, tightly grasping the edge of the upper stone step with both hands and starting to climb upwards. Qingyang was all focused on climbing upwards, hoping to see the high priest immediately. It wasn't until he felt a bit powerless and wanted to rest that he realized he couldn't see the torch held by Yinglong and Xiaohao below. I can't stop, my father is still waiting for me to go back and treat him. I must climb the rooftop at the Xuanyuan www.zhaoxuanyuan.com. He gritted his teeth and continued to climb the stone steps, enduring the soreness all over his body. He didn't know when the slippery things on the stone steps had disappeared. He wanted to speed up, but he exerted force on both hands and feet. His fingers couldn't see how many scars had been cut by the sharp edges of the stone steps, and the pain on his palm was like cutting flesh, piercing through his heart. He gritted his teeth and moved up the step by step, forgetting in his mind that the temple of sacrifice to heaven was built with 90.9 steps. Most ordinary people would have already died to the west if they wanted to reach the top of the temple of heaven. Although Qingyang knew the result, he never thought he would back down. When he felt weak again, he suddenly realized that the stone steps he was holding with both hands were extremely cold. He felt that he was not holding onto the stone steps, but rather ice cubes. All the stone steps were like ice knives, damaging Qingyang's body. Not only did they cause him pain and tear, but they also made him shiver and numb. He still struggled to reach out his fingers to the upper stone steps and continued to climb up with his senses. Step by step, his legs seemed numb and frozen, so he leaned on his hands and forcefully dragged them upwards. His eyebrows seemed to be frozen, and he tried hard to open his eyes wider. Fortunately, he could touch the edge of the stone steps in the dark. The frozen eyebrows were like blades stuck under his eyelids, and when his eyes moved, his whole face was in excruciating pain as if a blade had cut off a piece of flesh. Xuanyuan knew that he was covered in wounds all over his body. If he gave up easily due to pain, even if he relaxed his body for a while, he might never be able to get up. In a daze, he saw his father right in front of him, with a familiar smile and his father's resolute gaze, as if saying, "Xuanyuan, come to the temple of heaven with your father and worship ancestors and gods together." "Father!" Xuanyuan gasped and shouted, his weak voice instantly engulfed by the dead night. Chapter 4. Priests of the Temple of Heaven. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Since childhood, he has heard his father talk about sacrificing to the Temple of Heaven. Only human leaders with the identity of Yellow Emperor are qualified to be welcomed to the top of the altar by the High Priest. And those who are welcomed by the High Priest do not need to climb the stone steps themselves. The High Priest will send the divine beast White Deer to bring him from below to the Temple of Heaven, and only the Yellow Emperor has received such treatment. In order to prevent anyone from entering the Temple of Heaven and blaspheming the gods, the High Priest built a 999th level stone staircase. In order to increase the difficulty of climbing, he also used magic to set up disasters at every 333rd level stone staircase position. Once a person touches these disasters, their life may be in danger at any time. Xuanyuan, who was on the brink of death, seemed to see her father sitting on the back of the divine beast White Deer, slowly disappearing into the darkness. He wanted to climb up another stone step, but no matter how hard he tried, his fingers felt as if they were not his own, without any reaction. He began to feel a bit anxious, his hands and feet like they were pinned to a stone step, motionless. He was unwilling to be frozen to death on the stone steps like this. His cracked lips had blood streaks at some point, and he wanted to shout out. He endured the pain and opened his mouth. Before he could make a sound, he coughed violently and spat out a large mouthful of blood, which scattered on the surrounding stone steps. Slowly, he felt the blood in his stiff body accelerating its circulation, his fingers twitching slightly, his body temperature warming up, the stone steps no longer so cold, and the surrounding ice layer had completely melted. He felt his body recovering its strength, hoping to give him a strong mind again. He carefully tried to continue climbing to the top of the mountain. I don't know how long he crawled, but his recovered strength was gradually exhausted. His exhausted body was teasing his heart, and a voice sounded in his ear. Giving up would not be so painful. With this sound, his fingers began to feel a bit lazy, slowly curling up without the strength to reach out and grab the steps. His arms drooped limply, and suddenly his father's admonition rang out above his head. Xuanyuan suddenly opened his eyes, shook his arms, and his hands worked hard to grab the edge of the steps. He stabilized the center of gravity of his upper body, and suddenly a whirlwind blew over his head, almost blowing him down the steps. The wind grew stronger and messed up his hair, blinded his eyes, and dissipated his last bit of perseverance. His already exhausted limbs were unable to resist the inexplicable strong wind that hit him. His body broke away from the stone steps and was lifted into mid-air by the strong wind of the night. He floated in mid-air, with no strength to say goodbye to his body. In the moment he closed his eyes, he saw his smiling father calling out his name. In the night sky, where the wind had stopped and the flames had pierced through, an old man wearing a white robe, with white hair and a childlike appearance, holding a millennium-old vine dragon-shaped crutch, stood in the center of the castle hall. In front of him was a circular stone bed, on which lay a young man, Xuanyuan, who had fainted. A white deer divine beast walked slowly in from outside, shouting a disc-shaped Ganoderma. It approached the old man and stretched its neck to bring the Ganoderma closer to its owner's palm. The old man held a cane in his right hand, as if he had already sensed the breath of the white deer entering. Without even looking, he extended his left hand with his palm facing upwards. The divine deer, who understood the master's intention, gently placed the Lingji mushroom in his palm, and then walked back a few times with its head held high, afraid of disturbing the master's ability to cast spells and save people. The old man silently recited his mind technique, and the lingji in his palm transformed into a golden light, instantly transforming into an oval-shaped pill. He threw the pill into the air and suspended it, then recited a command. The pill slowly flew towards Ji Qingyang lying below. As it was about to touch her lips, Ji Qingyang opened her mouth slightly and revealed some gaps, and the pill entered his mouth directly. Ganlu, go. The old man spoke with his right arm extended, and his middle and index fingers directed towards Ji Qingyang's head. Then, the dragon head on the divine wooden cane in his left hand shot out a crystal-clear dragon as thick as a finger. The crystal dragon passed through the air and entered Ji Qingyang's mouth. After a while, his dry and pale lips slowly turned red, and his cheeks began to turn red. Half an hour later, Ji Qingyang's fingers twitched, and then his eyelids lifted upwards with force. Perhaps too tired, he couldn't open his eyes, and his eyeballs were just spinning inside his eyelids as if he hadn't adapted to the outside light. Observing Ji Qingyang's expression, the old man immediately saw the reason. It was because although the pill dispelled the cold in his body, the dragon beard nectar also had a healing effect on internal injuries in his body. The combination of the two had a certain counter effect on his body. Thinking of this, the old man with white hair walked lightly towards Ji Qingyang's side, and his right hand exerted force to gently stroke his body. A stream of heat spread throughout Ji Qingyang's entire body. In an instant, the consciousness of all the joints in his body became increasingly apparent, and his legs and feet gradually gained the strength to wake up. His consciousness gradually became clear, and his eyes suddenly opened. Who are you? Ji Qingyang woke up from a serious illness with a faint tone, and the first thing she saw was the old man who had saved him. Just wake up. The old man smiled contentedly. Am I already dead? Ji Qingyang had never met an elderly person with a childlike face and white hair who could still smile so brightly. In his impression, the older members of the clan did not wait until their hair was completely white, and some elderly people had already died of old age when they were only half white, making it impossible for them to live up to the longevity of the elderly person in front of him. You are the son of the Yellow Emperor, the hope of the Chinese people, and will not die easily. The old man looked kindly at the young man who had already sat up from the stone bed. How do you know that I am the son of the Yellow Emperor? Ji Qingyang asked in surprise. Although I haven't seen your face, I still recognize the Xuanyuan sword you carry on your back. Xuanyuan sword. Ji Qingyang immediately looked at his back and face, and found that the hilt was still there. When he was swept up by the hurricane, he had already lost any perception of everything he carried, including his clothes. He had already left the earth and was floating in the air, completely unconscious. He remembered very clearly, and the pain and dizziness made his heart seem to have stopped beating long ago. When he was a child, the elderly often told him that only after death can a person leave the earth and fly into the sky. Ji Qingyang recalled her pain and looked at the strange-looking old man in front of her, and suddenly remembered something. He exclaimed in surprise, "Ah! Are you the fairy who leads our souls towards the heavenly way?" No, the old man looked at the young man with kindness and pity at Xuanyuan.com. He still smiled and said, "My name is not Xuanyuan, I am a high priest and a dear saint." High priest. Upon hearing these words, Ji Qingyang suddenly woke up and realized that the important thing he had to do was to find the high priest. He couldn't believe he was alive, let alone that the person he saw in front of him was the high priest who could cure his father. The high priest Lu Sheng seemed to see the young man's complex thoughts and turned to one side, saying, "The position where you are standing now is officially dedicated to the Temple of Heaven. You sacrificed yourself and forgot to climb the 999 stone steps of the Temple of Heaven, which have 3 gates. From top to bottom, there are 3 realms of heaven, earth, and humanity. Every 333 steps form a boundary, with the heavenly realm being a tornado and hurricane, the earthly realm being extremely cloudy and frosty, and the human realm being muddy and difficult to navigate. The power of each realm can cause people with weak willpower to fall back to their starting point, and even put their lives in danger. Your thoughts have brought you to the temple of sacrifice to heaven, and in the future, you will take on important responsibilities and carry forward the indomitable spirit of our tribe. I will definitely remember the words of the high priest. Now that my father is seriously ill, he has nightmares all night long, and his spirit is weak. I hope the high priest can find a way to save him. Ji Qingyang pleaded. I had anticipated all of this. In the battle of the deer chasing, Chio's army was injured by my golden armor divine dragon. The Zhuolu tribe then invited the fairy island birds of the thousand-feather flying phoenix to assist in the battle, and all the creatures in the world fought against each other. As the guardian god, they violated the Taoist law of self-destruction bestowed upon them by heaven. The golden armor divine dragon and the thousand-feather flying phoenix, who knew their inviolable power, passed away in the air at the same time, transforming into dragon beads and falling into the abyss of the East China Sea. The guardian god was punished by heaven, and as the king of people, he naturally could not escape the punishment of heaven. Qiyu had already been killed by the Yellow Emperor and had nowhere to go. The Yellow Emperor himself was also seriously ill, unable to sleep at night, and in constant fear. The disease that the Yellow Emperor suffered was called the Nightmare Syndrome. Chapter 5. Xuanyuan Sword Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As the high priest said, is there any way to cure father's illness? Ji Qingyang urgently asked. Unless you retrieve the Dragon Ball from the abyss of the East China Sea and absorb the Dragon Heart Qi for the Yellow Emperor, you can dispel the disease and restore your vitality. The high priest said. The abyss of the East China Sea. Although I have never heard of this place before, in order to recover from my father's illness, I am now looking for Dragon Ball. Ji Qingyang spoke as if walking out. Don't be too hasty. The abyss of the East China Sea is very far from here, with bumpy and dangerous journeys. It's not something you can reach overnight. The high priest said. My father's body is deteriorating day by day, and his life is in danger. No matter how far the abyss of the East China Sea is, as long as I still have my feet, I will walk step by step to get there. No matter how dangerous it is, I am willing to use my flesh and blood to fight for the Dragon Ball. Ji Qingyang's will is firm, and her eyes are filled with confidence that the Dragon Ball will not give up. Although you have the filial piety of sacrificing yourself to save your father, have you ever thought about the meaning of risking your life to go to the abyss of the East China Sea if you fight to death and get the Dragon Ball but cannot bring it back alive to treat your father's illness? The old man understood Ji Qingyang's eagerness to help his father, but he did not approve of taking reckless actions due to impatience. He asked back with some concern. After listening to the words of the high priest, Ji Qingyang was momentarily speechless. He only wanted to immediately embark on the journey of searching for the Dragon Ball, but forgot that the danger he encountered might prevent the Dragon Ball from being safely delivered to his father's side. What's going on? Can't you answer my question? The high priest asked with a slightly reproachful tone. I earnestly request the high priest to help me retrieve the Dragon Ball and cure my father's nightmare. Ji Qingyang finished speaking with a devout expression on her face, knelt on one knee and clasped her fists in front of her forehead. Her pleading eyes were filled with tears as she looked at the high priest. Young master, please get up quickly. The high priest bent down and lifted Ji Qingyang's fists with his right hand, saying, Xuanyuan Huangdi is the leader of our tribe. As a high priest, saving his life is my duty. Why use the word, please? Get up quickly. Thank you very much, high priest. Ji Qingyang slowly stood up. The matter of retrieving the Dragon Ball from the abyss of the East China Sea requires long-term consideration and cannot be rushed. I have my own method, and you follow me. The high priest Saint Wang said and walked towards the door. At this moment, Ji Qingyang had already regained his physical and mental strength, and his mind and body had also improved a lot. He followed the high priest into a tall stone door. This is a grand hall, with a white veil hanging from the top and circular pillars around the room. The patterns on the veil are fresh and elegant, with occasional strands of white immortal energy lingering around the 4 stone pillars. Passing through the stone pillars of the main hall, there is a circular platform about 1 meter high at the bottom, and there are steps leading to the platform. The high priest led Ji Qingyang up the circular platform in front of him and arrived at the center of the platform. The central position of the platform emitted golden light, and a crystal ball the size of a sun suspended in mid-air. The high priest extended his palm and placed his backhand on top of the crystal ball. He slowly exerted his magic and suddenly emitted countless lightning flames from the center of his palm, like a net wrapped around the crystal ball. As the electric fire grew denser, the crystal ball gradually turned red all over, as if being roasted by a blazing fire. After a while, only the sound of glass cracking was heard, and the crystal ball split in half in mid-air. The high priest stopped casting and the flames extinguished. An ancient book flew out of the cracked crystal ball and slowly landed in the high priest's palm. Ji Qingyang watched in surprise as everything happened before her, afraid to speak out, afraid that her carelessness would affect the high priest's magic. "Young master, please take a look." The high priest brings the ancient book to Ji Qingyang's face. The ancient book is made of sheepskin, with traditional Chinese characters written on it. On the cover of the ancient book, there are 4 neat traditional characters, Tiandao sword technique. The font is bold, and the strokes cross horizontally and vertically with great force. It is like a masterpiece inlaid on a sheepskin scroll, but there are no visible flaws. This is a sword manual. Ji Qingyang looked at the thick sheepskin scroll and was puzzled that a sword manual was actually hidden in a magical crystal ball. This book is about ancient swordsmanship, and each move contains the power of natural reincarnation. Once the recipient of this book masters all the swordsmanship, they can grasp the power of life and death in the human world. If it falls into the hands of bad people, wouldn't it be a disaster on earth? That's why I sealed it here. The old man threw the sword manual in mid-air and continued, saying that when Qiyu sent his generals to steal the sword manual, they couldn't escape the mechanism of the 999th level stone steps and all died below the stone level. The sword manual must never fall into the hands of the Qiyu tribe. Fortunately, Qiyu has died and the world has begun to settle. Our Huaxia tribe will no longer be disturbed by the Zhuolu tribe, Ji Qingyang said with satisfaction. Although Qiyu's body is dead, his spirit is not dead. The young master cannot take it lightly. The old man looked at the sword manual and then at the Xuanyuan sword carried behind Ji Qingyang. He said, although the ancient sword manual is incredibly magical and intimidating, without the Xuanyuan sword carried on your body, it would be like a piece of waste paper. Even if someone took it away, it would be useless. So only Xuanyuan sword can be trained into an ancient sword manual. Ji Qingyang said. Exactly, the old man nodded. The Xuanyuan sword was originally a golden armor scale that fell from the body of the golden armored divine dragon during the boundary between heaven and earth in ancient times. Your father picked it up and offered it as a divine artifact. Later, the golden armored divine dragon dreamt and warned the Yellow Emperor that, given the Yellow Emperor's meritorious protection of the dragon scale, the golden armor scale would soon transform into an invincible divine sword, named Xuanyuan sword. From then on, the Yellow Emperor honored the divine dragon as the guardian deity of the Chinese people. So Xuanyuan sword is a divine sword, no wonder father wants me to bring it to you. Ji Qingyang listened to the high priest's account and instantly felt awe for the Xuanyuan sword. He had always believed that the Xuanyuan sword in his father's hand was just a very beautiful and sharp ordinary self-defense weapon. Your father asked you to bring Xuanyuan sword, and I have understood his meaning. The high priest said that your father is currently seriously ill and unable to use the Xuanyuan sword. Only you are able to use the Xuanyuan sword now, so you must learn the Xuanyuan sword technique in a short period of time and be able to flexibly master its sharpness in this sword manual. Ji Qingyang took off the Xuanyuan sword he was carrying on his back, staring at the blade with both eyes. He said earnestly, "I will practice my swordsmanship with all my heart, even if I don't eat or drink, I will practice it as soon as possible. As long as you have the determination, I will definitely help you master the essence of swordsmanship as soon as possible." After the high priest finished speaking, he waved his right hand towards the sheepskin roll hanging in the air, as if he had understood the meaning of the high priest's spiritual sword manual. He flew to Ji Qingyang's side and happily took it in his hand. After handing over the sword manual to Ji Qingyang, the high priest let him rest in the bedroom for a few days. When his body fully regained its vitality, the high priest took him to the top of the temple of heaven to worship the gods. The ground of the sacrificial altar is paved with smooth stone slabs, and a stone wall with flying dragon patterns is located inside. The sacrificial stone table is placed in front of the dragon wall, with white jade carved offerings on top, including sheep noodles, cow heads, and pig heads. On the floor facing the stone table, there is a pattern resembling the shape of Tai Chi and Bagua, illuminated by the sun and moon. The circle on the right is a sun chart, with lines of varying lengths engraved on its edges, representing the light emitted by the sun. On the left is a semi-dot circular moon pattern, surrounded by stars surrounding the moon. The high priest gestured for Ji Qingyang to come to the altar and bow. The young master said that anyone who goes to the temple of heaven must perform heavenly rituals. Ji Qingyang was only thinking about the sword manual and almost forgot the etiquette. Upon hearing the high priest's reminder, she immediately went to the altar and stood in the middle of the sun and moon pattern, bowing 3 times to the flying dragon carved on the stone wall, and then performing a gentleman's ceremony. She kowtowed to the book garden www.zhaoxuyuan.com and prayed to the ground. After Ji Qingyang finished his salute, the high priest came to him and said, "This will be the place where you will practice your swordsmanship hard. I hope you can study the sword manual and mind techniques with care, and set off on the journey to the abyss of the East China Sea as soon as possible. I will practice diligently and never disappoint the expectations of the high priest." After Ji Qingyang finished speaking, he pulled out the Xuanyuan sword and held it tightly in his hand. His other hand was ready to open the sword manual, but when he was about to open the first page, he couldn't open it. He tried to open it from the middle again, but no matter how he used it, the parchment scroll never opened a page. "To open the Xuanyuan sword manual, you must use the flying mantra," said the high priest. So, the sword manual still needs a secret key to see its content. Ji Qingyang didn't expect that a sword manual would require so many programs to obtain its true content. "I will teach you the flying mantra now," the high priest said, extending his left palm and gently placing it on Ji Qingyang's forehead, reciting the mind technique. "My heart is true, my true heart gives birth to God, the gods protect the sword, and the book opens the sword with clarity." The high priest kept repeating the spell and then used a spell to open the third eye between Ji Qingyang's eyebrows, the heavenly eye. You must remember the key terms, otherwise the Xuanyuan sword manual will not be opened. The high priest withdrew his left hand and continued, "I have already opened the heavenly eye for you. The heavenly eye is connected to the sky, and your understanding of swordsmanship will achieve twice the result with half the effort. I can only help you here, and the rest will depend on your own nature. Your father is seriously ill, and I will go and pray for him to protect his spirit and soul from the most difficult time now." "Thank you, high priest." Ji Qingyang focused on reciting the flying mantra while holding the sword manual. After reciting it for a while, his sword manual slowly flew into the air, hovering in front of the stone wall dragon statue. Then the cover of the book was opened, and the content on the first page was enlarged and mapped onto the stone wall engraved with the flying dragon. Chapter 6. Man Sword Union 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Seeing the Sanskrit sword notation on the stone wall, Ji Qingyang frowned slightly. He had never learned Sanskrit characters, which were called heavenly languages. He had only heard of them from his father, not seen them, let alone let him learn about their content. Do I really have no fate with this sword manual? Ji Qingyang was a bit discouraged. He was already eager to see the content inside earlier, but he didn't expect the book to open like this. He was depressed for a while, thinking that there was still a high priest around him. He immediately had hope again, and he looked around the sky platform, but did not find the figure of the high priest. "High priest, are you there?" Ji Qingyang was somewhat surprised. Although the high priest was still by his side not long ago, he disappeared after a while. "I don't even know when the high priest left, and I don't even notice it at all." Ji Qingyang shouted several times, but no one responded. He knew that the high priest had left and could only rely on his own abilities to obtain swordsmanship. However, when he stood in front of the stone wall again and looked up to read those Sanskrit heavenly books, he still had a helpless expression on his face. He couldn't understand the content on them, as these words were something he had never seen before. The more he wanted to guess the meaning of these Sanskrit words, the more painful his mind became. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and his eyes began to tingle like heat. He tightly closed his eyes and gathered his will to prevent himself from falling down. Then, a magical scene appeared, and a golden light flashed. His third eye, the heavenly eye, opened between his eyebrows. With the heavenly eye, Ji Qingyang was able to understand the Sanskrit characters on the sword manual, and he happily began practicing swordsmanship according to the content in the manual. The first secret of Xuanyuan sword technique, the flying sword from outside the sky, Ji Qing silently recited the moves on the sword manual, moving her body and calming her mind. Her mind was free-spirited, and the flying sword was in the sky. He practiced his swordsmanship word by word, sometimes holding the Xuanyuan sword and flying into the air, and then throwing it into mid-air. He recited the flying Sanskrit and then flew on top of the Xuanyuan sword like a swallow. He flew in the air with the Xuanyuan sword, and the profound sword manual fascinated Ji Qingyang. The more he practiced his swordsmanship with heart, the more obsessed he became with the wonder of swordsmanship. Unconsciously, he had been practicing swordsmanship on the Temple of Heaven for 15 days and nights. During this time, if he was hungry, he would eat the spiritual grass on the Temple of Heaven, and if he was thirsty, he would drink the holy water from the spring exposed on the stone wall. When tired, one should sit on the ground and lie in the sky to make a bed. 15 days and nights, he mastered all the moves in the sword manual, from the first technique of flying swords in the sky to the last technique of invisibility in swordsmanship. "I finally mastered it," and Ji Qingyang excitedly tried the Xuanyuan sword on the Temple of Heaven. He sacrificed his sword to the air, clasped his hands together, and controlled the Xuanyuan sword with his mind. He extended his finger towards a stone pillar on the heavenly platform, and in an instant, the Xuanyuan sword had flown to the front of the pillar. With a single sword, the pillar split in half. Just then, the white deer came behind him. Although you have mastered swordsmanship moves and techniques, you may not necessarily grasp the essence of the entire swordsmanship in a short period of time. The high priest said, jumping off the white deer and coming to Ji Qingyang's side to continue. "Your hands holding the sword handle carry your evil energy. Once the Xuanyuan sword you are holding is stained with human blood, you will be controlled by your inner demons, and the consequences will be unimaginable. You may also be in danger of life. That's why your father, Xuanyuan Yellow Emperor, although possesses the most powerful golden armor divine sword in the world, never dares to use it casually. So much so that he would rather seal the sword manual in the Temple of Heaven than practice all the swordsmanship in this manual. This time, the dragon heart fell into the sea, and he asked you to bring Xuanyuan's sword here to find me. He was also worried that the great wizard of Qiyu, Lady Ba, would find the dragon heart and resurrect Qiyu again. If they really find the dragon heart, Qiyu would resurrect and reappear the world, which would be devastating for the entire Yan and Huang tribe, and even other tribes would become Qiyu's slaves. At that time, Qiyu would be the true immortal god of war, and no one could defeat him again. It turned out that after the high priest finished speaking, Ji Qingyang was immediately surprised. "Before you leave here, remember my warning. Do not use the Xuanyuan sword casually, especially do not let the blade be stained with mortal blood. Remember not to awaken your inner demons. The high priest solemnly and with a hint of concern, instructs you. Heart demon. Ji Qingyang heard this term for the first time. He only knew that a person only has one heart, so why is there a heart demon? The human heart is complex, with both good and evil hearts. The human heart is constantly changing, and the only constant is the original intention. Therefore, always remember your original intention, rather than being influenced by external factors and acting recklessly. Once a person changes their original intention, it may cause you to lose the initial direction, as the high priest taught. What is the original intention? Ji Qingyang listened to the teachings of the high priest and felt that he had too little understanding of human hearts. He wanted to ask more clearly. The initial good heart, the high priest thought for a moment and continued, at the beginning of a person's life, the heart is inherently good, loving all living beings, and loved by all people. As the high priest spoke, he came to the confession and continued, heart demons always control people's will when they are too proud to remember, causing them to forget their original intention and nature. In the future, as you experience more, you will naturally understand how complex the human heart is. However, you must always remind yourself to protect your good heart and suppress your evil heart. Ji Qingyang seemed to understand a bit, and there were many things he didn't fully understand. However, thinking that his father was still waiting for him to go back, he decided not to spend time seeking advice from the high priest on these complex issues. He just wanted to leave now and embark on the journey back. I will definitely remember the words of the high priest, and when I return to Huaxia City, I will definitely remember my original intention, consolidate my swordsmanship and techniques, and never dare to have any selfish thoughts, Ji Qingyang said seriously. Seeing you return like an arrow, your heart is no longer here. The high priest looked away from the temple of heaven and continued, I won't force you either. You go down to the temple of heaven. Thank you to the high priest for helping me practice the Xuanyuan sword technique these days. Qingyang will never forget the high priest's kindness. Ji Qingyang knelt 3 times and kowtowed to the stone dragon in front of the confession table. Go ahead, the high priest approached and helped him up, looking for the Xuanyuan www.zhaoxuanyuan.com, and advised him to always remember my advice. Yes, Ji Qingyang slowly stood up. Bai Lu held his head high and came to the side of Ji Qingyang, then bent his limbs and knelt down, lowering his body to just half his height. You sit on the white deer, and I'll let it take you down. The high priest gestured for Ji Qingyang to sit on the back of the white deer. The white deer was originally a divine beast and was the exclusive mount of the high priest. How could I casually desecrate the dignity of the high priest? Ji Qingyang, out of respect for the high priest, was very afraid to sit on top of the divine beast. He continued, when I came, I relied on my hands to climb, but now when I go back, I can still rely on my own efforts to return to the stone steps. Although the divine deer is my mount, it is also a member of the Huaxia tribe. You were originally the young master of the Huaxia tribe, and it is your duty to go down with it. You don't need to be too humble. Seeing Ji Qingyang so humble and respectful, the high priest was very pleased. He then said that walking down the stone steps also requires going through 90.9 layers of stone steps. Those 3 dangerous passes may also consume the energy of the Xuanyuan sword technique that you have just mastered, and will even delay your time back. Upon hearing these risks, Ji Qingyang was taken aback and dared not think about walking alone anymore. I am willing to listen to the arrangement of the high priest. You sit on the white deer, let it give you a ride, go. Thank you, high priest. Ji Qingyang walked towards the white deer and stepped onto its back. As soon as he sat on it, he felt the back of the white deer so comfortable and soft, like a body that had not been bathed in a long time lying in the sea surrounded by waves, washing away all fatigue and dirt. All the fatigue and drowsiness on his body in the past few days instantly turned into a refreshing breeze. He slowly left the ground, as if wings had grown on his ribs behind him. The white deer took him to the sky, and then steadily returned to the ground from the high clouds. Chapter 7. Wizardry Formation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. When it fell to the ground, it was already noon. The sky was overcast, and the wind blew the sand and dust on the ground. Xuanyuan thanked the divine deer and watched them fly away. Xuanyuan looked around, as if her eyes were searching for something. Apart from the intermittent flying sand and dust, there were only dry grass rolling around on the ground. Where did the two of them go? Xuanyuan searched for a long time but couldn't find the accompanying Yinglong and Xiaohao. He pondered whether they had returned early. Even if they did, they would at least give me a signal. Thinking of this, he found several stones that were half a person high nearby. He looked around these stones several times, but did not find any signs of them leaving the city early engraved on them. If they haven't returned to the city, where can they go? Xuanyuan couldn't think of any other place for the two of them. The Temple of Heaven was their first visit and they were both unfamiliar with the situation here. Now that they had suddenly disappeared, could something have happened and they were forced to leave? I went to ask the high priest, and Xuanyuan thought that as soon as the high priest turned around, he saw the towering stone steps in front of him. He didn't have much time and energy to climb the Temple of Heaven anymore, and thought that his father was still in a hospital bed. He was more willing to leave this place immediately, but the two generals suddenly disappeared, making him very uneasy. Are you in danger? The two of them have already died. Xuanyuan didn't believe that the two of them would die here, but now there are no signs of anyone alive or dead, except for the burnt grass ash used for heating found in front of the stone steps in the Temple of Heaven. He searched further and found several short trees on the right side of the road that had been cut off. He carefully observed the traces of the broken trunk and confirmed that it had been cut off by someone using a sharp tool. Who would cut off branches? Thinking of this, he felt that there must have been a fight here. He walked another distance based on his intuition and saw a forest. When he walked into the forest, the sky had already darkened and the forest was eerie and terrifying. Occasionally, there were a few startled cries from the night birds, which made Xuanyuan nervous. He instinctively held the Xuanyuan sword from his back in his hand, ready to deal with any possible danger at any time. The forest was quiet and desolate, suddenly accompanied by a sharp sound. Behind Xuanyuan, a group of crows screamed in panic and flew into the night sky in a dark sky. Xuanyuan walked cautiously forward, bowing his body against the tree trunk. After walking for a while, he seemed to hear some sound of water flowing. Is there a river here? Xuanyuan cautiously walked towards the sound of the water flow in the dark, when suddenly he let out a whoosh and accidentally kicked a branch of a tree. He paused for a moment, and after the sound subsided, the surroundings became silent again. He began to approach the water flow again. The sound of the water flow became louder and closer to the river. Xuanyuan walked cautiously, and through the leaves, he seemed to be able to see the faint starlight shining back on the river surface. Arriving at the river, Xuanyuan walked a long way, his lips dry from thirst, and he wanted to get close to the river and take a sip of water to moisten his throat. The clear river water made a hollow and sharp roar, and he crouched down tightly holding his sword, afraid of accidentally falling into the river. He reached out his hand and hadn't even touched the surface of the water when he noticed something unusual behind him. He tilted his eyes and stared silently at the position behind him, with some leaves swaying in the dim light. Then he heard the faint footsteps approaching his back. Xuanyuan slowly prepared the Xuanyuan sword for battle. He was about to stand up to better protect himself when the footsteps behind him rushed towards him, like a sudden gust of wind and waves. Although he reacted quickly, he was almost hit by the incoming wind and waves. Fortunately, he used the Xuanyuan sword to block the wind and waves, and with a curse, the Xuanyuan sword flew into the air, piercing the incoming person in a roundabout. I saw the person blocking the flying sword with the weapon in their hand. However, although the flying sword was too powerful and did not harm anyone, it knocked the attacker back 3 zhang and fell to the ground. Ji Qingyang withdrew the Xuanyuan sword and chased after it. Just as he was about to use the second move of the Xuanyuan sword technique and the cold light was invisible, he suddenly stopped. Ing Long! Ji Qingyang let out a cry. The attacker who fell to the ground was slowly standing up in pain. When he heard a familiar voice calling out his name, he immediately recognized the opponent as his young master, Ji Qingyang. Young master, is it really you? The person who said this was Xiao Hao, who was hiding on the side. He originally intended to attack the opponent from behind and helping Long kill the sudden intruder while they were fighting. It turned out to be you too. Why are you hiding in this place? Why aren't you waiting for me under the steps of the Temple of Heaven? Ji Qingyang and the other two approached him and asked. We have finally waited for you to come down to the Temple of Heaven. If you don't come back, the two of us may die here, said Ing Long with some fear. What exactly happened to make you escape here? Ji Qingyang urgently asked. We will slowly tell you about this matter when we take you to the tree hole where you are hiding. This forest is not very safe, so let's leave first. Xiao Hao carefully looked around. Okay, let's find a place to rest first, and then plan our return. Ji Qingyang said as she put away the Xuanyuan sword and carried it behind her back. There is an ancient tree in front of the riverbank, with a trunk 3 zhang thick. There is a large tree hole in the middle of the tree body, where weeds are lush and hiding inside is both hidden and safe. Ing Long finished speaking and led the way ahead. The three of them walked in the dark for a while and arrived at a pitch-black place. Ing Long stopped ahead and used his weapons to push away the branches and dry grass blocking the entrance. Ji Qingyang followed the two of them inside and whispered to herself, this ancient tree emits a faint fragrance. Is it a 1,000-year-old ancient spirit sandalwood tree? The faint fragrance made Ji Qingyang feel refreshed. He felt several waves of energy surging in his body within the elixir field, until his internal organs felt different. His blood also began to accelerate, as if a stream had suddenly been injected into the waves, stirring up the world. Ji Qingyang was feverish all over and his body was a bit shaky, almost unable to stand. Fortunately, Ing Long saw his abnormality and immediately helped Ji Qingyang. Young master, what's wrong with you? Ing Long asked anxiously. Xiao Hao also anxiously looked at Ji Qingyang, who was almost unsteady. Ing Long and Xiao Hao were both very clear that if something unexpected happened to Ji Qingyang, they would not be able to explain it to the Yellow Emperor when they returned. After a while, as his body slowly returned to normal, Ji Qingyang realized that his body was much better than before, and he vaguely felt that his body had gained some inexplicable strength. I'm fine now, maybe it was because I was thirsty and hungry all the way that I felt a little dizzy. Can you tell me what happened and made you two hide here? Ji Qingyang asked urgently after confirming that her body had indeed recovered. General Ing Long came up close and told Ji Qingyang everything that had happened. On the second day after Ji Qingyang arrived at the Temple of Heaven, a group of people also arrived at the stone steps of the Temple of Heaven. These people were ordered by the great wizard of the Zhuolu tribe, Nu Ba, to come to the Temple of Heaven to steal the sword manual. Ing Long was worried that these people climbing to the Temple of Heaven would pose a danger to Ji Qingyang, so he and Xiao Hao stopped these people in front of the stone steps. The two sides had a big fight, and as a result, these people were beaten away by Ing Long and the others. The two thought that if they repelled these people, they would not come back again. Unexpectedly, on the third day, many more people came. Among these people, there were 3 leaders, all 3 of whom were personally appointed by the great wizard as the 3 guardians of the Dharma. They were dressed in black cloaks and held stone hammers weighing 100 pounds in their hands. After the 3 of them arrived, they immediately surrounded the 2 with a magic maze. Witchcraft maze is a unique technique created by the great wizard, the female Ba, to trap people in a maze using psychedelic techniques, and then to burn them to death using a large fire when there is no way out in the maze. In the maze, there are mountains, rocks, and jungles everywhere, always walking in circles, with no way out. Ing Long and Xiao Hao walked inside and arrived at a mountain. They were about to climb up the mountain and wanted to stand on the top of the mountain to see if there were any exits in the distance. Before they could start climbing, they saw countless rubble rolling down from the mountain. The two of them dodged left and right, but fortunately they were quite clever. Only Xiao Hao suffered a slight skin injury. The two of them were walking in the maze exhausted and thirsty. They walked to an open space and wanted to rest for a while. Suddenly, lightning flashed and thunder roared, and countless lightning bolts struck their heads from different directions in the sky. The sound of electric shocks hit the ground, causing the earth to start shaking. Ing Long and Xiao Hao both shook their bodies along with the earth. The ground slowly cracked open, getting bigger and bigger. Ing Long saw the cracks under his feet like the earth's gradually opening big mouth, and the rumbling sound of the earth's movement was like the earth was about to eat people. Although the two of them worked hard to maintain their body balance and avoid falling to the ground, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make themselves move half a step. As I watched the gap between my feet crack open for over a meter and continue to grow larger, Ing Long's legs, which were separated, became increasingly difficult to hold. Suddenly, there was a loud shock, causing the earth to shake violently. The crack in the ground instantly widened and looked like a vast abyss from below. Ing Long's body suddenly tilted downwards, but fortunately, Xiao Hao was skilled. He flew down to the ground, stepped on the protruding fault soil, and pulled on Ing Long, who almost fell. After catching Xiao Hao's outstretched hand, Ing Long used his toes to step on the fault wall, jumped up, and stood on the ground again. Xiao Hao also stood next to him, and the earth trembled for a while before suddenly calming down. Where exactly is this place? The earthquake started before taking a break. What's going on? Xiao Hao looked puzzled. We seem to have entered a fantasy world, where we have been walking for a long time but have never found a way out. Moreover, the trees and mountains here are different from what we see in reality, as if they are real or fake, confusing our senses. Ing Long said and looked around quietly. The leaves did not sway, but there was a sound of wind not far away. It's too quiet here, we need to be careful. Xiao Hao is walking ahead and preparing to walk into a forest ahead. Did you hear the wind? Answer Long's question. The wind. Are you referring to the direction of the forest? Xiao Hao points towards the direction of the forest. No, it's behind us. The wind behind me. Xiao Hao intentionally looked behind him. He listened attentively and seemed to hear some movement as well. He was puzzled and said, "Why is there a sound of wind when the leaves of this small tree behind him remain motionless?" Xiao Hao, be careful, run quickly. Ing Long hurriedly shouted to himself to run desperately ahead first. Ing Long, what are you running for? Xiao Hao was puzzled when he saw his companions running desperately. He looked curiously behind him and was immediately startled. In the direction of the forest behind him, a group of wild boars with exposed fangs and large bodies ran out at some point. These wild boars rushed towards them like flying swords. They are too big, what should we do? Xiao Hao ran desperately at the same speed as Ing Long, anxiously asking. Although the two of them had also seen wild boars in the wilderness of Huaxia City, the ugly wild boar in front of them had long beaks on both sides, and its exposed fangs were like two sharp and cold-blooded curved knives. Don't you usually enjoy eating wild boar meat in Huaxia City? How could this happen? General Xiao Hao, you dare not even eat wild boars today. Ing Long was running and thinking of a solution, but when the incident suddenly occurred, it was also difficult for him to immediately come up with a way to survive. This wild boar is a bit big today. Its bones are not easy to chew on and its meat is not easy to cook. Let's think of a way to survive. Don't mock me, otherwise they will eat us later. The two of them ran desperately, their faces still unchanged and their breath not panting. Fortunately, they had deep military strength and strong bodies. Although they were still accelerating their escape, they could not stop the fun of their mutual ridicule. I don't know how long I ran, but the wild boars behind me were thrown far away by them. However, even though they had been thrown a long way, those strange wild boars still chased after me relentlessly. They ran into the middle of a huge rock, which was 3 zhang high and had a strange shape. The two of them hid inside and no longer had to worry about wild boars chasing after them. Yinglong had just rested against the boulder for a while when he suddenly noticed a red light coming from above, and clusters of sky fire covering the entire sky above the boulder. "We have nowhere to escape this time," Xiao Hao exclaimed in terror. "How could there be a sudden fire falling from the sky? Quickly find a place to hide." Yinglong wanted to find a hidden cave or crevice in the ground, but he soon realized that even if there was a crevice to penetrate, his life might not be able to survive because the closer the fire fell from the sky to the ground, the higher the temperature of the earth. Before the fire reached the ground, Yinglong felt that his feet were being scorched by the fire. "The ground is so hot, we really have nowhere to escape this time." Xiao Hao tried his best to keep his feet on the ground as long as possible, but the surrounding air also began to be filled with high temperatures. This was the hottest weather they had ever encountered before. The first sky fire fell to a place, and several huge rocks were smashed. The moment the rocks fell to the ground, they also caught fire. "Even if it's a sea of fire, we don't have much to fear death," Yinglong said. "I just don't know how the young master is doing now." "There shouldn't be any danger for the young master to go find the high priest, but we will soon be engulfed by the sea of fire," said Xiao Haozheng. Coincidentally, a blazing fire hit their heads, and in an instant, the huge stones turned into a ball of fire, with flames everywhere around us. As they were about to be slowly roasted by the fire, a white deer flew around in the air as they both accepted death. Then, large snowflakes began to fall in the sky. As soon as the snowflakes landed on the fiery red boulder, it instantly turned into icy rock, and the ground began to freeze. The sky fire gradually extinguished. Seeing the sudden change under his feet, Yinglong looked up and looked around his head in disbelief. He saw an old man holding a dragon's head cane sitting on the back of a white deer, smiling and looking at the two of them. "Look who's that." Xiao Hao also saw the old man in the air. Yinglong looked at it for a long time and exclaimed, somewhat unsure, "High Priest." "You are the High Priest, and we have finally seen you," Xiao Hao said excitedly. The High Priest smiled in the air and said, "Don't panic, you two. You are now trapped in the heavenly fire Stonehenge by the magic maze of the great wizard Qiyu. Please find the book garden www.zhaoxuanyuan.com. I can help you leave this psychedelic demon formation on this day of ice and snow." The High Priest cast another spell and used the highest spell of the heavenly ice and snow to dissolve all the heavenly fire. The two of them stood safely on the real ground, exhausted and with injured arms. They cautiously scanned the surroundings to see if the protectors of the great wizards who were chasing them were still there. "I have broken through their magic maze and driven them away from the steps of the Temple of Heaven. For safety reasons, you two can hide in the forest to the north, where there is millennium-old spiritual energy. The magic maze of the Qiyu tribe cannot be used. Go quickly." After the High Priest finished speaking, he disappeared out of thin air. Originally, Yinglong wanted to ask about the news of the young master Ji Qingyang, but he did not expect the High Priest to leave so quickly that he was not given a chance to speak. The two followed the instructions of the High Priest and finally walked into the forest, dragging their injured bodies until they discovered Ji Qingyang. After listening to the two of them finish speaking, Ji Qingyang suddenly remembered the sentence from the sword manual, "1,000 years of spiritual energy is born, and a golden sword howls in the sky." No wonder she had a feeling of spiritual doubling as soon as she stepped into the tree hole. It turned out that the golden sword he was carrying behind him had absorbed the spiritual energy of a 1,000-year-old tree. He touched the handle of the sword with his hand and felt that the golden sword he was carrying was not as heavy as it was at the beginning. The lightness of it made him doubt whether the sword was still on him. After touching it, the sword suddenly emitted a fluorescence. When Ji Qingyang took her hand away, the fluorescence of the sword disappeared again. Young master, this sword. Yinglong is worried about any issues with the sword. Xuanyuan's sword has already gained its own spiritual energy, which is a good thing for us. We don't have to worry about that great wizard using any more magic to deal with us. Ji Qingyang happily said, let's leave here now and return to Huaxia City. Chapter 8. Chinese City-States. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ji Qingyang, along with her two generals, found their lost warhorses at the end of the creek in the forest. The three of them traveled day and night, enjoying meals and camping. By the time they arrived at Huaxia City, it was already noon. The city wall is built high, with guards guarding at the top, and the city gate is tightly closed. Open the city gate quickly, young master is back. Yinglong shouted at the city guard on the wall. Open the city gate. Shout loudly from the wall, and then the tall city gate is opened by everyone from inside. Entering the city, on both sides of the road were some nomadic people walking around, some holding animal skins to make clothes, and some carrying rough baskets made of bamboo, containing wild vegetables picked from the river. 4 or 5 children were wearing worn-out animal skin clothes and playing with mud in front of several grass houses on the roadside. These children suddenly saw someone riding a tall horse from their roadside, each with yellow mud hands stretched out, pointing and laughing. It's been a long time since I've seen the people walking leisurely on the streets. Ji Qingyang sighed and said, the Qiyu Legion has been fighting against us Yanhuang people for years. The people have suffered from war, their lives have been devastated, and they are struggling. Fortunately, Qiyu was defeated by our army, so the people can enjoy the peace they bring. Now that Qiyu is dead, under the leadership of the Yellow Emperor, we can return to the peaceful days before, said Xiao Hao. Although Qiyu has passed away, his spirit is still being used by the great wizard's female Ba to incite his remaining troops to continue seeking revenge. Therefore, we must not take it lightly, thinking that we can live a peaceful life of farming and weaving from now on. We must use our own lives to protect the peaceful life of our people. Ji Qingyang said, patting the horse's buttocks, and the warhorse roared and ran wildly again. Soon, the news of their return arrived at the Yellow Emperor's sleeping palace. The Yellow Emperor was still weak. When the attendant arrived at the bed to report the news of the young master's return to the city, the Yellow Emperor lying on the bed waved his hand vigorously, gesturing for the attendant to take Ji Qingyang to the front of the bed to meet. Quickly, the dormitory attendant retreated, and after a while, Ji Qingyang, who walked in quickly, knelt on both knees in front of the bed. Father, Qingyang has returned, and Ji Qingyang tightly grasped the hand of the Yellow Emperor with tears in her eyes. The Yellow Emperor's illness was no longer enough to support him. He sat up and glanced at his son's appearance. He lay in pain on the bed, hearing his son's voice, and his face seemed to have some energy. He tried hard to open his mouth, and when Ji Qingyang saw that his father had something to say to him, she immediately leaned her ears close and listened carefully. In the future, when doing anything, one must seek the opinions of the high priest. The Yellow Emperor pauses for a moment every word he says, and after a sentence, he has exhausted all his strength. I came back this time to follow the arrangement of the high priest, say goodbye to you, go to the abyss of the East China Sea to search for the Dragon Ball. I will definitely bring the Dragon Ball back and cure your illness. Ji Qingyang said, tears streaming down her cheeks, and a tear dropped on the back of the hand that the Yellow Emperor had extended. The Yellow Emperor's fingers weakly touched Ji Qingyang's face as he approached, panting heavily and saying, no. I want to cry. Yes, children don't cry. Seeing her father's weak body, Ji Qingyang endured painful tears and continued to say, I will abide by my father's teachings. As a member of the Yan and Huang ethnic groups, we are all determined by our bones and will never fall in the face of suffering and disaster at any time. Ji Qingyang explained all the moral principles that her father had taught her since childhood, hoping to use this as a way to cheer up her critically ill father. Ji Qingyang stayed guard at the Yellow Emperor's palace for a while until he closed his eyes and rested in bed. The attendant came in, gesturing for him. When the patient needed rest, he slowly stood up, arched his waist, and tiptoed out. Returning to her residence, Ji Qingyang brought in Long and Xiao Hao to discuss going to the abyss of the East China Sea. The next day, with the support of her senior officials, Ji Qingyang summoned civil and military officials to present a report in the city council hall, stating that she was going to search for the Dragon Ball. Everyone is very worried about the health of the Yellow Emperor. They hope for his health every day, and more people are afraid that rumors of the possible resurrection of Qiyu may become a reality. If that's the case, the remnants of the Zhuolu tribe will invade the land of China again, and there won't be many soldiers from the Yan and Huang tribes who can resist again. Everyone is afraid of being attacked by the Qiyu army again, and they may actually become Qiyu's slaves. After several years of war with the Zhuolu tribe, most of the young men of the Yan and Huang tribes have died. They are now in need of cultivation and rest. After listening to Ji Qingyang's words, they all agree and follow the instructions of the young master to take care of the Yellow Emperor and defend the city. 10 days later, Ji Qingyang arranged the affairs of the city-state. He did not follow the advice of the old ministers and led too many clan soldiers, only Xiaohao and Yinglong to leave the city-state. They followed the instructions of the high priest and traveled eastward for 5 days and 5 nights. When they were thirsty, they drank stream water or twisted off tender green branches and leaves to moisten their throats and quench their thirst. I don't know how long they had walked. On this day, the three of them came to several dilapidated thatched houses and saw yellow sand all over the ground. They walked dozens of miles further, and along the way, there were some burned-down houses, as well as the yellow sand road that had not been walked for a long time. This place is so desolate, with dilapidated grass houses everywhere. Where have these people gone? Ji Qingyang looked at the desolate tribes around her with a hint of desolation and confusion. Yinglong, who was following by, couldn't help but exclaim that this used to be a bustling tribal territory, with bustling vegetable markets and laughter. It was because of the invasion and killing of foreign tribes that it has become like this now. The people of the tribe have been wandering and homeless, and the empty home has long been abandoned into a ghost village because they haven't seen their owner return for a long time. Is this the tribe of Emperor Yan? Xiao Hao looked through the broken fragments of clay jars in front of the house. That's right, this is a tribe of the Yan Emperor. When the Yan Emperor's clan was defeated by the Qiyu Legion, all the tribe members began a great escape. The tribal territory they left behind slowly became barren. As Yinglong spoke, the wind blew up on the road. In order to protect our home, we must find the Dragon Ball this time. We must not let the Dragon Ball be found earlier by Qiyu's great wizard, otherwise Qiyu will truly be resurrected. Our home may be like this now, with yellow sand everywhere and no roads, dilapidated houses, and no people left. Ji Qingyang said, and suddenly flipped onto his horse's back. His heart was touched by the desolation in front of him. He only wanted to reach the abyss of the East China Sea one day earlier and then obtain the Dragon Ball. Seeing that their young master had mounted a horse, Yinglong and Xiao Hao understood that Ji Qingyang was about to gallop away. The two of them immediately turned over and mounted their horses, while the three whipped their war horses and galloped forward. Just as they left the tribe not far away, a strong wind suddenly broke out, and yellow sand filled the sky, hitting the horses' head with sand and stones. The war horses roared and could not continue moving forward. The three of them were blinded by the yellow sand, and the sand and stones stabbed towards their faces like flying knives. At this moment, Xiaohao's face had already been marked with several bloodstains from sand and stones. We can't see anything, these flying sand hitting our faces is like cutting with a knife. What should we do? Although Xiaohao raised his voice and spoke loudly, he was still drowned in the roar of the strong wind. Yellow sand blocks the way, which direction should we go? Young master, Yinglong tightly grasped the reins of the warhorse and loudly asked the young master in front of him. The wind and sand are blowing more and more, and the wind is blowing stronger and stronger. The wind assists Joy, while the sand borrows from the wind. The sandstorm filled the sky, and Ji Qingyang could no longer distinguish which direction he should be heading. In front of him was only yellow sand, and all he could see was the sandstorm. Even though he knew that Yinglong and Xiaohao were nearby, he could not see where the two were. Even their voices were still in the howling wind, and he could barely hear a little ending. Just when Ji Qingyang didn't know what to do, he pulled out the Xuanyuan sword and silently recited the sixth move of the Xuanyuan sword technique. The dragon set out to sea, and he held up his golden sword straight into the sky. Then a golden light blew up a tornado, sweeping away the flying sand in front of them. The yellow sand around him changed direction and avoided his left, right, front, and back positions. Gradually, Xiaohao and Yinglong were no longer obstructed by the yellow sand, and the three of them could finally see each other. However, towards the front, the yellow sand still covered their eyes, creating a chaotic world. "Young lord, I can finally see you." Yinglong happily said that after being trapped by the yellow sand, he couldn't see Ji Qingyang. He was very worried that his young lord would have an accident, and he couldn't explain it to the yellow emperor even when he went back. "Young master, I'm here. Are you okay?" Xiaohao also saw his own young master. "I'm fine." Ji Qingyang used Xuanyuan's sword to eliminate the wind and sand around them, and their communication and conversation were completely unaffected. "Without direction, I don't know when the yellow sand ahead will stop. We can't stay stuck here all the time," Yinglong said with some concern. "These sandstorms are too strong. Look at my face, it's almost turned into a ghost talisman." Xiaohao endured the pain and pointed to his face that had been blown open by the sandstorms. "If you have a ghost talisman on your face, you don't have to be afraid of the great wizard and them," Yinglong said with a smile on his face. "How do you say that? Are the great wizards afraid of ghost talismans?" Xiaohao asked in confusion. "Because the great wizard is a ghost, and after you become a ghost talisman, you become a ghost among ghosts. They are actually afraid of you," Yinglong teased Xiaohao and said. "You are the ghost talisman." Xiaohao pointed at Yinglong's face and suddenly said with a laugh. "Look at your face, it's not much better than mine. It's like being kissed by a centipede. Look at Xuanyuan www.zhaoxuanyuan.com, horizontally and vertically, it's even uglier than mine." Upon hearing Xiaohao's words, Yinglong realized that his face was also very painful. He instinctively touched the wound on his face with his palm, looking bitter. "Alright, you two don't have to argue anymore. You can't stop talking wherever you go. Ji Qingyang knows her two generals very well. If you don't interrupt their conversation, they might argue endlessly in a while. If they were allowed to mock each other, those old grievances would be brought out by the two of them and repeated 10,000 times, even feeling thirsty. I was originally focused on how to protect the safety of the young master, but as a general protecting the master, he was still joking with me." Xiaohao glared at Yinglong with grievances. "If I could really eliminate the great wizard, I would rather be a ghost talisman to protect the young master and let all those spells disappear," Yinglong said seriously, his face tingling with blood and pain. "You two are both about the same, half a pound and half a pound. It's better to think about how to protect your general's face with such eloquence. Ji Qingyang doesn't need them to show loyalty. Now there's no road in front of them, and there's flying yellow sand all around. He's even more worried about how to leave here early. My face is fine. When fighting and killing on the battlefield, those knife wounds are much more severe than the scratches on this sand and stone. I have never been afraid of them." Xiaohao rode his horse close to the mount of the young master Ji Qingyang as if pleasing him, saying, "Now that the yellow sand is blocking the way, we cannot distinguish the direction. How is it good, young master?" "Young master, don't worry. I have a way to give it a try," Yinglong came forward and said seriously. "What good way can you do it?" Xiaohao has some doubts. Ing Long, do you have any good way to separate this yellow sand that blocks the sun and find our way to the East China Sea? Tell me quickly and I'll listen. Ji Qingyang turns around and looks at Ing Long. Chapter 9. Flying Sands and Strange Walls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When we first entered the village, it was all heading east, but the yellow sand was blowing head-on, indicating that the road ahead of us was in the east direction, Ing Long affirmed. Is it that simple? Xiao Hao looked at the general who was older than him in surprise and said, when we reached the middle of the tribe, yellow sand came from all directions, and we were also surrounded by flying sand. We couldn't see each other, and the warhorses had already changed their positions due to being frightened. Xiao Hao is right. When I used the Xuanyuan sword to break through the yellow sand maze wall around me, neither of your horses was in the same direction as me. If we were to follow your method, which person's position should we follow to determine the correct direction to the east? Ji Qingyang asked Ing Long and then glanced at Xiao Hao. Although Xiao Hao pointed out the shortcomings of his proposed method, Ing Long did not get angry or argue. Instead, he thought for a moment and said, we have always been led by Xiao Zhu at the front. I believe that Xiao Zhu's current position should be the right direction. Ji Qingyang did not agree with Ing Long's statement. He was somewhat disappointed and said that the warhorses had already been dazzled by the yellow sand in their eyes. When they were frightened, their biggest flaw was to first raise their front hooves and then turn their heads. My warhorses were no longer in their original positions at this moment. Isn't there no way to get out of this flying sand and hit the wall? Xiao Hao stared at the wild sand in front of him, which was beginning to accelerate and flip in the air. If it weren't for the young master using the Xuanyuan sword to break through the mysterious wall around them, he might have been submerged by the yellow sand long ago. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his back. Young master, I am willing to explore the road ahead first. If I find any houses or roads, I will come back and tell you, said Ing Long. I can't let you go on an adventure alone. Ji Qingyang looked at the yellow sand around her that seemed to be cannibalistic and said, even if you leave our protective circle and break into the sand wall, you may not be able to return safely. Isn't it because I will lose a great general in vain? Isn't it a dilemma now? Xiao Hao was worried and said, we can't always be stuck here, and we don't know when Huangsha can stop. It's difficult to stop on your own in the sand and stone wall formation, it's an evil curse, Ji Qingyang said seriously. Curse? Xiao Hao and Ing Long exclaimed in surprise in unison. This kind of curse is only used by the great wizards of the Zhuolu tribe, Ji Qingyang continued. It is a very vicious curse. After plundering and killing this tribe, they brought a curse to this tribe. As long as someone enters this tribe, the wind will be strong, and the yellow sand will block the sun. People will slowly be drained of blood by the yellow sand until they become a pile of bones. That is to say, no one can enter this abandoned tribe, and this place will no longer be suitable for human habitation, said Ing Long. The great wizard is really ruthless. He even wants to exterminate the Yan Emperor family and doesn't leave them any way out. So now we're not even more dangerous. Xiao Hao thought of the great wizard being so cruel, and also thought of himself and the young master being trapped here. He was really afraid that the great wizard would suddenly appear and use even more vicious methods to deal with them. No matter how dangerous it may be, we must use our lives to protect the safety of the young master. After Ing Long finished speaking, he tightly grasped the long sword in his handshake. That's right. Protecting the young master is our duty, and I will always be at the forefront. Xiao Hao's firm gaze is fixed on those yellow sands who are preparing to devour people, preparing for battle at any time. With the two of you following me so faithfully, I believe I will soon find the Dragon Ball. Ji Qingyang is very pleased that his two generals can always follow him and protect his safety. Although they often argue, he knows very well that they never hesitate in front of big issues. We both obey the orders of the young master at any time, as the dragon said. Yes, as long as the young master orders me to rush into the yellow sand formation, Xiaohao will not hesitate to bear the brunt. This sand and stone ghost is hitting the wall, there's no need for the two of you to work hard inside. Just look at me, Ji Qingyang said, reciting a mnemonic. Her dragon eyes are purple, and her sword points towards the east. As Ji Qingyang uttered the sword technique, Xuanyuan's sword emitted purple electric light throughout its body. The sword body flew in mid-air, and one end of the blade moved left and right like a pointer in mid-air, as if searching for the direction to shoot. Kai, Ji Qingyang finished speaking to Xuanyuan's sword. Xuanyuan's sword, emitting a purple light, suddenly stopped in the direction she had found for a while. Then Xuanyuan's sword rushed into the yellow sand like a meteor, and a sharp purple light split open the sand and stone ghost wall. The road is open. Xiaohao saw the place where the flying sword flew over and instantly opened up a main road, with yellow sand separated on both sides of the road. We set off, following behind the golden armor divine sword. The direction ahead is heading east. Ji Qingyang finished speaking and patted his warhorse, being the first to walk forward. Finally there's a way, keep up. Ing Long saw that the young master had already rode into the main road and immediately followed him. The three of them quickly broke through the cursed tribe. They walked for another month, climbing steep mountains and stepping on the turbulent waters of the Shay River. The three of them tirelessly walked forward. If you're hungry, find some wild fruits in the ancient forest to satisfy your hunger. If you're lucky, you'll also catch a few wild animals to eat raw or grill them over a stone fire to eat some cooked food. Passing by the beach and Gobi, they relied on the food they brought with them. They ate a meal in 3 parts, and when they were thirsty, they relied on the rain on rainy days to quench their thirst. Some of the game's meat had changed its flavor, although it was unpleasant to eat. In order to survive and leave the desert, they temporarily blocked their taste buds, only doing mechanical tooth collisions that only occur when they are hungry. Until they swallow the food into their throats, they are only stuffing things into their stomachs to continue their lives, and have no longer had the pleasure of eating. Passing through the deep valley, next to it was a forest, with millennium-old vines intertwined and thorns tangled around the tall branches. The branches were bent down and connected to the wetland below. The entire forest was tightly enclosed by thorny branches and leaves, like a wall blocking the path of the three of them. This is not a forest at all, it's simply a city wall without a road, and there are thorns on this wall that I dare not even jump. Xiaohao looked at the besieged city woven with vines and murmured anxiously. No matter how difficult it is to navigate through mountains or dive into rivers, we cannot stop searching for the Dragon Ball. As Ing Long spoke, he grabbed his weapon and walked quickly to the front of the tree wall. He raised his knife and cut through it fiercely, while the vines, which were as thick as a bowl, remained motionless. Ing Long accidentally injured the back of his hand while chopping, gritting his teeth and enduring pain without saying a word. You're right, it can be solved when encountering mountains and rivers. Now that there is no road in this forest, you haven't split it. Xiaohao has completely lost faith in the rock-solid vines, and he's already very tired. He really wants the young master to say something that allows him to rest, so that he can lie down and sleep for a while, even if he sleeps on the ground. He turns around and looks at Ji Qingyang, who has been lost in thought and has not spoken. He is also worried that the young master may misunderstand his lack of loyalty to protect his master. He immediately changes his mind. Since you can't split it, I'll carve a path for him. After Xiaohao finished speaking, he was about to charge towards the forest wall with the weapon in his hand. You two don't need to split, this forest can't be split. After Ji Qingyang finished speaking, he put his warhorse aside and ate grass. He found a small tree and sat down against its trunk. Ing Long walked over and sat on the ground, asking, "Young master, what should we do now?" "Let's take a break first." Ji Qingyang looked at the dense forest and said calmly, "Let's take a break first. It's getting dark now, and even if we can cut open this forest, we may not be able to safely leave this place. Why does this place look so strange? Xiaohao put away his weapons and went to the Xuanyuan website www.zhaoxuanyuan.com. He had only made a pose and had no intention of actually touching those thorny vines. This is a jungle maze, and the vines are as strong as rocks that cannot be opened at all. Only at night do the vines slowly open on their own. Ji Qingyang looked up at the setting sun, which still had some afterglow, and continued, "There is still some time before it gets dark. Let's take a break first, and then we can enter the forest when it gets dark." The young master was wise and everything was arranged by the young master. Xiaohao was very happy when he heard the word rest. He also found a seat and sat down next to Ji Qingyang. He continued, "I don't know if it will be safer in this place at night. No matter how unsafe it is inside, I, Yinglong, will use my life to protect the safety of the young master. As long as we follow the young master, we are not afraid of difficulties wherever we go." Xiaohao smiles like flattery. After dark, it may not be as safe inside as it is now, so both of you should be careful not to be eaten by the vampire vines in the forest, otherwise we may not be able to survive out of this maze jungle, Ji Qingyang reminded seriously. Yes, the two agreed in unison. Time passed quickly, and the night slowly fell. Ji Qingyang finished eating the last wild fruit and slowly stood up, along with the two people beside her. The three of them grabbed their warhorses and prepared to walk towards the forest. At this moment, under the cover of night, the vines on the tree wall made a rustling sound, like thorns on thorns brushing over cloth strips. Shutting net opened on its own, Xiaohao said excitedly. "Let's go," Ji Qingyang said and walked forward. Yinglong held a warhorse in one hand and a weapon in the other, guarding and following behind the young master. Chapter 10. Maze Jungle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The vine first opened a hole, slowly becoming the size of a hole, and finally opened a path. Ji Qingyang walked on the grassland at the entrance of the jungle. He felt the grass he was stepping on was soft, and his whole body seemed to have not been stepped on firmly. Every step he took was crooked and lost its center of gravity, as if he was drifting in the ocean, his body undulating with the waves. The warhorse also stumbled along with its owner on the grass, struggling to move forward. Xiaohao pulled his warhorse hard, but couldn't keep it up with his speed. "Why is the grassland here so strange? We couldn't maintain balance when we stepped on it, so Yinglong worked hard to prevent himself from tilting to the ground. You two must take good care of your warhorses and not let them eat the grass under your feet, otherwise the warhorses may be poisoned and die due to accidental ingestion of sticky grass." Ji Qingyang reminded us to stabilize our bodies, maintain balance at all times, and not fall to the ground. Once our skin touches the grass, it will be firmly stuck by the grass leaves. If we want to break free at that time, we will have to wait for dawn. It's dawn, isn't the forest wall closing again? Xiaohao Dao. That's right, after dawn, the maze jungle will turn into a dead wall again, Ji Qingyang said as she struggled forward. The three of them struggled on the grass with their left and right feet rising and falling, using all their strength for each step. If that's the case, wouldn't it be impossible to leave this haunted place forever? Xiaohao pulled the warhorse hard and moved slowly. You should say a few words less. If you save a while and fall to the ground, you may never get out, said Yinglong, pulling his warhorse slowly and moving his steps. Ji Qingyang, who was walking ahead, relied on her grasp of the stickiness of the grassland and varied the range of her feet as the grass rose and fell. Although her walking was not as smooth as on the flat ground, she was already walking very fast compared to Long Xiaohao and his two companions. His warhorses were very spiritual and seemed to have a connection with his heart, and they were walking at the same pace as one. We must get out of this maze as soon as possible. As Ji Qingyang spoke, a dense mist began to emerge from the grass. Young master, it's foggy. Yinglong shouted. Don't panic, this is moisture. Follow me and hurry. Ji Qingyang urged. How does this mist smell? Xiaohao noticed a smell in the moisture, and he was a bit worried. There are many withered stamens falling under the grass, and the scent in the mist is the fragrance of flowers. Ji Qingyang also smelled the fragrance, and he said, if you inhale it deeply into your stomach, it can help you avoid hunger even if you don't eat for a day. There's such good air, no wonder before I entered the forest, I felt my stomach rumbling. Now I feel like my whole body is full of energy, and my stomach is bulging like I've had a delicious meal. Xiaohao said with some surprise, completely forgetting that he's still stepping on the bumpy grass under his feet. Since it's delicious food, you should eat more and not miss this free dinner. Yinglong gave Xiaohao a mocking glance. What he can't stand the most is his teammates who only know how to eat and drink, but are also timid and afraid of death. He doesn't understand what abilities Xiaohao has that will make the young master treat him like a general. Is it because his father is the most trusted minister of Xuanyuan Yellow Emperor that his son, regardless of his qualifications, should be treated with exception? Thinking of these, he always has objections to Xiaohao and ridicules him everywhere. Eating too much can also burst your stomach, and people can die from delicious food. Therefore, if you inhale too much moisture here with too much force, it can also lead to poisoning and death due to the aroma. Therefore, I advise you not to be greedy, otherwise your lives will be in danger. Ji Qingyang finished speaking and suddenly stopped. Not far in front of him, there were a few small bright spots, so small that if you didn't observe carefully, you wouldn't even see the moving light. Young master, what did you see? Yinglong rushed over and stood next to the young master just as Ji Qingyang was stationary. We will soon be able to leave this grassland. There should be a flat road ahead, Ji Qingyang said with a smile. But what I see is still the mist floating everywhere and the jungle where the starry sky cannot be seen. There is no flat road. There is only a swaying grassland under our feet, and the turbulence almost makes me dizzy. It's like being in the river with the waves rising and falling. Yinglong opened his eyes wide, almost staring out of his eyes, and didn't see the flat road that the young master had said. At this moment, Xiaohao also caught up. It was strange to see the two people in front standing still. He asked, young master, what are you looking at? Xiaohao curiously looked ahead and saw nothing but mist. There is a green armored flying insect with wings that can emit light in front, Ji Qingyang said as she looked at the few blue light spots in the distance. Why didn't I see it? Yinglong still hasn't noticed anything ahead. Where is it? Xiaohao tried hard to look at the mist floating ahead, but he didn't see it either. If you go further ahead, you will see it. Just now, I only saw a few of them, but these flying insects are in groups and they only fly in dry places. Ji Qingyang thought for a moment and continued, the ones I just saw may have been lost after flying out with the swarm of flying insects due to sudden fog. No wonder neither of us saw it. They should have flown away and found their own team, said Yinglong. That is to say, these green beetles are not far ahead, so let's go ahead quickly. This grassland is really bumpy, and I walk on it like sitting on a boat, feeling seasick. Xiaohao said with a painful expression on his face. Yinglong pulled his warhorse, afraid that it would be startled and break free, while constantly searching forward in the mist for the green armored flying insect that the young master had mentioned. Why haven't I been able to see the flying insect mentioned by the young master? After walking for a while, Xiaohao anxiously asked if it was because the young master had read it wrong or had imagined it. The young master said that if there are flying insects, there must be one. Although Yinglong was not confident when he said this, he believed that only by saying this could he make Xiaohao shut up in order not to hear his voice. However, he still believed in his young master in his heart and would not say things without factual basis. I saw it, Xiaohao suddenly shouted excitedly. What did you see? Yinglong was somewhat annoyed by his exclamation. There was a green light on the green armored flying insect, and Xiaohao balanced his body with force, pointing in the direction where he saw the flying insect. There's nothing. Yinglong looked towards the place he pointed to, and there was still mist. They disappeared again, in the mist. Xiao Hao was so excited that he forgot to pull the reins of the war horse in his hand. The black reins fell to the ground and were immediately firmly stuck. The undulating grass tightly attached the rope, and he found Xuanyuan www.zhaoxuanyuan.com to suck it tighter and tighter. The grass was like pulling the reins down with both hands, and the neck of the war horse was also pulled all the way down. The whole horse was bent and about to fall to the ground. Xiao Hao grabbed the warhorse. Ing Long noticed something was wrong with Xiao Hao's warhorse, and upon closer inspection, he realized that the reins had fallen to the ground. Xiao Hao turned around and shouted, "It's not good." When he discovered the reins of the warhorse, the two front hooves of the warhorse had already been pulled by the reins and were in a kneeling position. If it was later, the warhorse would be pulled down to the ground due to insufficient physical strength, and then it would be devoured by the grass. At this moment, one end of the reins was Xiao Hao pulling upwards with force, and the other end was the grassland constantly increasing suction. The more Xiao Hao exerted force, the grassland used greater force than he did to suck downwards. Gradually, Xiao Hao felt some leg pain and began to feel powerless. At this critical moment of danger, Ji Qingyang quickly pulled out his Xuanyuan sword. A golden light flashed by, and the reins pointed to by the sword broke in the middle in the blink of an eye. Just as one end of the grass landed on the ground, it was swallowed up by the grass. Seeing the broken reins being eaten by the grass in an instant, Xiao Hao and Ing Longmian looked at each other, their backs chilling with fear, their mouths open in fear, and they remained silent for a long time. "Walk honestly, you two can't be distracted anymore, otherwise you will be eaten by the grass like the broken reins just now. I may not be able to save you by then." Ji Qingyang took Xuanyuan's sword and reminded the two seriously. Yes, everything was in accordance with the teachings of the young master. The two of them met in unison, tightening their respective warhorses with ugly faces and cautiously lifting their feet forward. After walking for a few hours, the mist slowly thinned and the increasingly clear dots of light drifted in front of them. "Look, there are many flying insects," Xiao Hao shouted out.